Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to OPC Season 2. I'm Kevin Walker, joined with me this evening, Matt, Pixie, Carol, as we start the new round robin into Week 4.
And we're going to be kicking it off tonight with Blank versus Hong Kong Attitude. It's a pretty interesting way to start it off. We were kind of talking about what this means for both of these teams just before the show tonight, and it's one of these interesting things because of the last round robin, both of these teams are technically secure in the top 4. Both are at risk of being bumped out over the course of this round robin, but they're also currently tied for match record itself. The head-to-head technically would put Hong Kong Attitude ahead. They've beaten Blank before. So there's this thing of if you're Blank, first of all, you want revenge. Second of all, if you don't win tonight, your own place actually in the top 4 becomes less secure, whereas Hong Kong Attitudes becomes much more secure.
Exactly, and we're heading into the space of the tournament now where only 3 weeks of regular season play remain. In those 3 weeks, we will determine which 4 teams move on to the 2-week playoffs. So very important now for teams to secure those top placements, then to move on to the big money. So, yeah. I mean, for a team like Blank and Hong Kong Attitude, as you've already mentioned, very critical now, they don't lose their top 4 spot.
Exactly, and that's the thing. At the top of this round robin, look, it's safe to say Ardian are pretty well secure in that top 4 spot. Flash Wolves probably, unless something goes terribly wrong for them, and you can kind of see this in the standings. It is from that 3rd place, really down to 7th place now with Matchy and Mega Thunder both being tied in scoreline. Every single one of those teams is in striking distance of making playoffs at the end of this round robin. So there is going to be this real race for Hong Kong Attitude and Blank, especially to stay ahead of the pack, because that pack is going to be desperately trying to keep up.
Absolutely. And let's go ahead and now meet the teams. On the home side, we're going to start with Hong Kong Attitude, CQB on the support, Ching on tank, Randy on flex, Mango Jai on support, Shailin on offense, and Mui on offense as well.
And then taking a look at Blank Esports, their opponents tonight who will be on the away side. We have Trill on the tank, Huss on offense, Gunba on support, Huwu, their flex player, RQT on support, and Eat You Up as their second offense player.
There it is, home and away teams. If you're unsure about how the home and away system works, the home team will get map picks 1, 3, and 5. That is the control, the assault, and the last hybrid. The away team gets map picks 2 and 4. That is the hybrid in the middle, and also the escort map number 4. And the team that picks the map will also choose the starting side as well. And of course, because we have 2 regular season, or rather 2 round robins within the regular season, each team who face each other will have an opportunity to be both home and away. The last time we saw these 2 teams met, where Hong Kong Attitude did beat Blank Esports, that was on Blank's home side and Hong Kong Attitude's away side.
And we've got to speak kind of frankly about the fact that this is now the inverse of that matchup tonight. Because like I said, Hong Kong Attitude already beat Blank the last time these 2 teams met. And indeed actually beat them the last time they met in the final round robin of Season 1. So overall, like in all games these guys have ever played, their match record is 3 wins to Blank, 2 wins to Hong Kong Attitude. So this is actually Hong Kong Attitude's opportunity to even up that score. And also in terms of this tournament itself, Season 2, get ahead. And the thing I want to say about that home and away thing there is, because Blank are on the away side tonight, they do not tonight have the opportunity to cover that weakness they have on assault, and Hong Kong Attitude have the opportunity to discomfort Blank on their strongest map mode, which is control. It's going to be hard to do, but this is actually Hong Kong Attitude who are much more poised to win this just on the picks alone.
And certainly the last time that we saw these 2 teams meet, it was a 3-0 victory in favor of Hong Kong Attitude, despite already being on the away side. That means on both the control and the assault that Blank picked, that was a loss for Blank. This time we're coming around where it is very important as the away team for Blank that like you mentioned, they don't go out of loss on the opposite picks, that they do not get to pick now.
Exactly.
Especially when we look at assault, which has been historically their weakest game mode, and more importantly, that we do see a better performance now from Blank, whether that results in a direct win or, you know, a much better result than the last time we did see these 2 teams meet.
Yeah, now the one thing to keep in mind, last time these 2 teams met, since then, Blank have definitely improved as it is. They met sort of about halfway through that first round robin. I believe it was on their first weekend of play, actually, because Blank didn't actually play a match in the very first weekend. They didn't appear until week 2. So in that short space there, because there was that week break, Blank actually really stepped up their game. So realistically, they've only actually played 2 weeks and stepped up quite a bit in that time. And then they've now had the opportunity to step up even further because, of course, they did come into this with the new roster, with whom they hadn't had a whole wealth of time to practice. By comparison, Hong Kong Attitude, pretty much the same. They have had some changes, but pretty much the same.
I think I do want to speak to some of the bigger changes on Hong Kong Attitude side, though, just not to sort of, I guess, underestimate the changes they have had made, because Randy, who was on the bench as a sub last season, now joins the starting roster and the flex position, replacing Captain Holiday Cal. Then you have Mui from Talon Esports and also the Hong Kong World Cup team coming in as the offense, and he's probably been the deadliest McCree we've seen so far in OPC season 2. Not only that, but as an offense player, he's been great.
And it's one of those things, right, by comparison, right, Hong Kong Attitude's roster changes have kind of been dynamite for them, whereas Blank's have been just an out-and-out swap. These are arguably better players on paper in the raw talent, but that extra time of gelling and getting them kind of up closer to their ceiling is the process that this team will be going through. Let's take a look at these teams.
Yeah, Shailin is a person I have to talk about here. He has been one of the shining stars of the OPC, not just on his own team, but certainly across the board, across all 8 teams. Now, his Tracer has probably had the most improvement since Season 1. He's now improved his Tracer to the standard where he is competing with some of the top DPSs in the tournament. If you want to talk about why, or rather how, Hong Kong Attitude were able to best Blank in a 3-0 sweep, the question really has to be, who were the players? And to answer that, Shailin winning those 1v1s against Hus, specifically Tracer versus Doomfist, and then you have Mui as well on the McCree, taking down EDUP's Tracer.
And that's the thing, like we said, together those two have just been absolute dynamite. Often when they do the McCree Doomfist with Shailin on the Doomfist, they really shine. I want to draw attention to this guy, though, who is in some respects opposite to Shailin, in that he tends to be the Doomfist player for this team. Hus has had a really kind of interesting road so far, and honestly, this is
It's good to meet you too, RQT.
Exactly.
It's good to meet you too.
I think this may actually be the first time they've sat next to each other. Like that's what that is. Like, good to meet you. Gumba's
wearing his hat from the World Cup though, so it brought him luck then. They were able to get the victory.
That's what it is.
They were able to come out on top.
So I want to jump back on Hus for a moment there. I won't say he's been inconsistent, but what has happened is sometimes we really see him go off, and then other times we really see him get shut down. And it seems that there's a lot of timidity in this team about allowing Hus to go off. But again, in that final week of play they've just had, in fact, their last few matches especially, we did start to see some real shining moments out of the guy. Indeed, they beat AHQ. That is not something to be balked at. And I fully expect to see that increase very constantly throughout the rest of this tournament, throughout the second round robin, because to be honest, so far, it has been a little bit iffy.
And both teams have, it's interesting you brought up they both beat AHQ, because their placement so far in the tournament, they've beaten the exact same team. So the teams they've lost to are Ardian and Flash Wolves, and the teams they have beaten are AHQ and Mega Thunder, Liblin Supreme, Machi, and yeah, as per mentioned, AHQ already. So I mean, they have beaten the exact same teams. Hong Kong Attitude went on to beat Blank, and they've lost to the exact same teams as well. So overall, it's been a fairly even journey for these guys, except for the fact that Hong Kong Attitude did actually beat Blank.
Yeah, and the other thing in there, though, that does have to be at least mentioned.
Oh, sorry, I do have to correct myself, because Mega Thunder did beat Hong Kong Attitude.
Exactly.
So that was the one change-up.
Yeah,
That was the one change-up.
That was what I was just about to bring up, because, of course, Mega Thunder they're currently sitting 2 and 5. They're tied for 6th place with Machi Esports. That's an interesting loss to have picked up for Hong Kong Attitude, and there were a couple of factors at play. A lot of them were just around general inconsistency, and I feel like we hit a bit of a tipping point in their series, Hong Kong Attitude against Flash Wolves specifically, that was very inconsistent, absolutely shining on some maps, really struggling on others, and since then, they just seem to have ironed out the kinks for good, and honestly, we're seeing Hong Kong Attitude now continuously be on the up. So as much as I say Blank have made a step up, Hong Kong Attitude have really made leaps and bounds in that same frame of time, but started from a slightly lower point.
And Hong Kong Attitude have not only made leaps and bounds this season, but also the previous seasons. It seems like their win streak, or more accurately speaking, their improvement has been tracked from all the way back in not even the final round robin, but towards the later end of the third round robin of first season, that's when we started seeing them take wins. That's when we started seeing them beat the teams like AHQ, beating Blank. They've continued that trend now. And if the trend continues, it would say that they beat Blank again, but the map pick did come out and it was Nepal.
Yeah, this is kind of interesting. I think this is one of those things that's neither here nor there. In general, I would say Hong Kong Attitude are just quite comfortable on this map. Honestly, there is no such thing as a bad control map for Blank. They are good on all of them. Generally, you just go for either neutral territory being Lijiang Tower, or you just go for whatever you are quite comfortable on. I'd say the only one you maybe want to avoid is Ilios if it isn't also a specialty of your own. Nothing too unsurprising here. There's something I just kind of want to add on to what you said there, and I feel like that's going to say, it's kind of going to be a major theme, I think, over this match we're about to see. As far as anyone is concerned, Hong Kong Attitude have now proved that they are a playoffs caliber team. The second round robin here is just about securing it for them. It's about getting it over the line. And it will be tough, it will be a challenge, but this is kind of the first step along there. And I said it at the top of the night, if Hong Kong Attitude walk away from this tonight with a win, they are looking very, very secure. If they walk away from this with a loss, then they are going to have to really work hard to stay ahead of the pack.
And this is the storyline that we talk about from last season, which is the fact that they felt like a playoffs team even towards the end of that last season. Now they get to prove it. They didn't have the opportunity to take one of the playoff spots then. They do now. They got their entire slate wiped clean, a blank sheet, if you will, and now they have the opportunity to beat Blank and take their proper placing.
And like I said, a win here as well would technically have these teams tied 3 for 3 in terms of total match record across all competitive games that these guys have played against one another. That includes OPC Season 1 and the matches they will have played thus far in Season 2. And maybe it would be, if it comes to a tie, the playoffs that break that tie. But first, all we have to see if Hong Kong Attitude can stay ahead of them one last time.
And we're not going to see any Doomfist to start things off because we're not quite on the Sanctum. This is going to be on Shrine, and both teams opting for a lot of mobility.
Yeah, and we're actually seeing Shylin not on the Tracer. I think this is quite interesting, but they are opting into the Genji, same as Blank. Again, interesting for Blank, because we really need to see a lot of mileage out of Huss. That's the opening that he's after. Good pick on a Ting, now gives them the pressure on the point itself. Huss looking to get right down the middle. Hong Kong Attitude very sensibly backing on off this one.
Absolutely. Well, Mui's not quite out of it just yet, but what I want to commend Hong Kong Attitude for is absolutely they backed up quite cleanly. On the other hand of that, you do have to also consider from Blank's side, from Blank's point of view, rather, they didn't actually get those kills. It didn't seem like they were really pressuring to chase additional kills. That might hurt them in the long run. They did get Mango Giant. That slows down Hong Kong Attitude somewhat, but ultimately only still 2 kills. They're not going to be really charged up.
Exactly, and that's the thing. I was about to say that pick on Mango Giant, it's cool, it buys them more time, but Hong Kong Attitude are still in the position now they can pressure back on the point, and are actually much closer to ultimates like Dragon Blade.
And that's the key thing here, because Gumba's close to Transcendence as well, so whoever gets the first ultimate, if it's Dragon Blade, Shylin's going to win it for his team. If it's Transcendence, he's going to be able to counter that Dragon Blade.
And that's a really great opening. Both Huss and Trill getting caught out on the side there a little bit, picked off as it were, and the open up is all there. This is honestly just cleanup by Hong Kong Attitude. The Pulse Bomb wasn't necessary per se, but good use to secure the fight with just that one ultimate.
And you actually see the timing of the attack here from Hong Kong Attitude. They managed to get in there just as Eat Up hits the 100% Pulse Bomb, just as RQT and Gumba are nearing their 100% as well. If the fight had waited any longer, if the fight lasted any longer and Blank didn't die so quickly, or rather Hong Kong Attitude didn't clean up so quickly, we would have had a situation when ultimates come into effect, and it would have been Blank getting those ultimates first. They would have probably have swung that fight backwards.
This is the important one to win, though, for Hong Kong Attitude. Ultimates are going to be roughly even. If they can win this and stay ahead, then they're going to be well poised to get more time on the point. But Huss, early pick onto his counterpart, is going to shoot that horse in the face pretty quick, and a Ting forced to ult along with Mango Giant. This is the open up now for Blank as the sound barrier pulls them into the fight, and they scatter Hong Kong Attitude wide. The Dragon Blade out from Huss hasn't found much, but the pressure is there, and with the extra picks they've got so far, they've already got the positioning. It's now just capitalizing on that ground. They are looking for an ideal pick here. Is Shylin able to re-enter this fight? Now, with the Dragon Blade could swing it, but Trill has got that Primal Rage and Hulu dealing with Shylin. That is a nice pick off. Mui is still dealing with these healers here, but honestly, Blank should still have the mileage. It's all about conversion, but Hong Kong Attitude still very much in this, and that pick onto Hulu could just be what it takes here as they go 1 for 1, and a Ting closing out on Huss. Blank may just end up getting pressured right back off this.
And we're talking about conversion here, but the one big thing Blank are not converting is actual camp pressure. They're not able to flip the cap over. All of this progress goes on the plus side for Hong Kong Attitude. We had a beginning where Blank were able to get a decent amount of progression in terms of favor against Hong Kong Attitude, but that's entirely flipped now. You had a situation where Shailin went down quite early to Hus. He came back, Hong Kong Attitude hadn't lost a cap, they hadn't lost a fight, Shailin ults again. And then you have a response play by Blank, but it's not enough.
That was honestly really well positioned by Hong Kong Attitude to scatter the way they did and kind of separate Blank so they couldn't capitalize. But Mui getting onto these backliners, that is a good one for one though, as EU up goes even on Mango Jai. But the open up now is going to be there for Blank with those healers not on the table, and ultimates were very close up for Hong Kong Attitude. This is the conversion they were lacking in the last fight as they close out on a Ting as well. And Hong Kong Attitude at 99% can very much just afford to cede this.
And this is where Blank need to run away with their advantage as well, because they do have ultimates online. This is when Hus gets his Dragon Blade. It's very important that Blank didn't use any support ultimates. You had RQ2 with the Sound Bear, you had Eat Up just getting Pulse Bomb as well, but because they got the 2 early kills, they can save those. Now they're in a position where they can defend, but they have to win 2 fights, and certainly for Hong Kong Attitude, 1 good fight will secure it for their team instead.
Yeah, they really need to find a good way to draw some ultimates out of Hong Kong Attitude in this fight. Indeed, position such that CQB has to blow Sound Barrier to get them on the point. That's not going to happen though. EU Up was kind of on the wrong part of that play there. Very well read by Hong Kong Attitude to move around the side, avoid these flankers.
In this situation, we're still getting a lot of progress now from Blank, but it is the first ultimate used by RQT instead, so they're not really capitalizing on that by seeking.
There's the open out. That's the one that Hus is after, but as that happens, Mui gets Hubu out of the mech, and suddenly Hus doesn't have the cover that he needs to go deep on this, and he's forced off to the side. Gumba going to be forced to use Transcendence, but that's the last support ultimate, and that could give them the mileage they need to survive. Shailin now, who is looking to get aggressive, but is being totally dealt to by these tanks. They go 1 for 1 losing Gunba, and honestly, Blank are losing a little bit of pressure, but this is on a knife's edge. Any DPS going off here will absolutely secure map 1. It's just a question of who, and as I say who, Woo, demegged could be the lack of pressure that Blank have, but is going to not be able to get back in the mech while Randy does. That should just be the one that swings it over here for Hong Kong Attitude now. The tanks start to clean up the fight. Blank looking to get pressured off. The cap's going to go through any moment now. Overtime. Don't know if Blank can really contest this with all those members dead.
Absolutely not. Everyone died at the same time, roughly. Gumba, the last one alive, not really going to do anything there. The one big problem for Hong Kong Attitude so far that you do see is Shailin not really getting mileage off the Dragon Blade. Both times we see him Dragon Blade, gets shut down immediately, doesn't get a return kill of any kind. That's not what you want to see from a guy like this. When you see Ursa on Ardian, 1 Dragon Blade, 3 kills, that's a very consistent
every
thing.
time.
So far now for Shailin, Genji just hasn't been his pick. You see him on Tracer, he's a big force to be reckoned with. You see him on Doomfist, he's a big force to be reckoned with. So far though, again, Genji not really working out. Despite that, they still win.
And I think part of that has to be, if we're speaking frankly, Hus has not had much impact on the Genji pick either. Part of that has been he hasn't been able to get the backup to go in, and it's been good target selection out of Hong Kong Attitude to deal with the tanks so that they can't cover Hus. But we need to find a way for, indeed, either of these teams to let the Genji go off.
And both Tracers have actually gone fairly even. You look at the trades on the kill feed, both kills are coming in roughly the same time on roughly the same targets. This time around, Shailin's going to hit the mark first.
Pressure on Gunba and RQT both going down to Shailin is really huge. Honestly, Hong Kong Attitude, as far as we know, have this point here. This is all but converted now as the cap going to unlock in a couple of seconds.
And this is very similar to Blank starting to Shrine, because in that situation, you had Hus open the first kill with the Genji dash. This time around, it's Shailin, but he gets both RQT and Gumba. Very critical, because it does now allow Hong Kong Attitude supports Mango Jai, CQB to get a very decent ultimate charge lead. Look at RQT on 16%. Compare that to CQB on 40% instead. Hong Kong Attitude set up to win the next fight as well.
Yeah, exactly. The saving grace for Blank is how much closer Gunba is to his ultimate to Mango Jai by comparison, but that still needs to come up online for them. Hong Kong Attitude are on the cusp of some ultimates. They don't have many yet, but that early pick should just seal the deal here. Blank, again, are just going to have to back up, kind of lick their wounds here with no counter trade coming in.
At least they're going to be able to back up safely, not lose any additional members, but it will feed additional progress on the Hong Kong Attitude sides. We talk about the fact that supports are close to ultimates here. They are getting much closer now. Gumba, you have to mention though, and you did talk about this already, he's going to be the first one, or rather the second one now to get an ultimate on his team, but you do have to be considerate still, because you're about to fight into a lot of Hong Kong Attitude ults.
To their credit, Blank have actually managed to really even up the ult charge, but a Ting getting the early pick on RQB takes that potential sound barrier off the table. That forces the Transcendence out of Gunba and will just be matched by Mango Jai. This is honestly going to come down again to these Genjis, or even just the Tracers getting a ton of picks. It's EU Up who opens that one up with a pick on Mui. And Shailin's fishing for this, but he needs to cover himself. Blank have an opportunity to get aggressive now, and they need to do so quickly.
The good news for Hong Kong Attitude is they kept the fight off the cap itself. They kept the fight around the spawn, not around the spawn, but around the entrance in the choke. That now forces Blank to come in and use their ultimate somewhere else. So now, Blank, this is their move.
That was good zoning, actually, out of Randy with the self-destruct, but a pick on Gunba as he was kind of fishing for Shaolin, and the follow-up is there. Now with Shaolin alive, he's able to rejoin the fight and put down that extra pressure. Blanca finally fighting on the point, but they're lacking in numbers because of how Hong Kong Attitude drew them in. It was kind of like a bait play almost, and it's absolutely gone off without a hitch here. Who we're going to self-destruct to buy time, will not remech though, and already at 99%. Or 90% rather.
And we have to have a very quick reset here from Blank because they're going to be rushing to contest this point. We're heading into the overtime. Somebody's got to touch this. If someone does, we're in a position where we can still win if you're on the Blank side. Huss is already Dragon Blade. We need kills.
He's Dragon Bladed mainly just to get in the points so that he doesn't die straight away, but he's still not going to get much done. Shaolin, on the other hand, going to cut down Eat You Up, who gets nothing with the pulse bomb, and that's the 3K we were talking about. And what a fitting way as well to seal the deal. Going to close out on Blank here, and 2-0 Hong Kong Attitude going to pick up Nepal.
Absolutely. The assurance policy from Mango Jai there as well. Had things turned south, if things went badly, Mango Jai ready with that transcendence. And on the Blank side, just not enough tools. The second to last fight, got to mention that one again. They took that fight outside the cap itself. That was probably on Hong Kong Attitude's side to determine and decipher this is exactly where we want the engagement to be. If you force the fight outside there, the ultimates are committed there, and suddenly for Blank, they have no cap pressure. Really important. This is the 3K.
And that's unfortunate for Blank as well, because actually just preceding that moment, Eat You Up had managed to solo kill Mui twice. They had a real kind of window, but because Hong Kong Attitude read the situation and position where they did, they couldn't, Blank couldn't rather, get onto the point itself. And there was some larger things there, like how they positioned and also kind of drawing out Gunby and Huss both using the low health Shaolin. And then there were just smaller things like Randy's placement of the self-destruct stopped the regroup from Eat You Up on the other side of the fight. It was a really great set of plays to actually stall them out for long enough that Mui was able to respawn a whole 3 times before he could rejoin that fight.
And that was probably the one fight where Blank were able to win. They were able to get the Tracer 1v1s in Eat You Up's favor. That's not a huge surprising thing. Eat Up's still one of the best Tracers in the OPC. Now what was concerning was, you look at the differences between Shrine and indeed Village. What went wrong on Shrine for Hong Kong Attitude mainly was the fact that, once again, Shaolin didn't really have some good moments, and yet still, they won that map. Then when we go to Village, suddenly those issues are fixed for Shaolin. He's able to get the picks he's looking for, opens up on both RQT and Gumba straight away with both dash reset kills to be able to secure that initial fight for them, and then you head into a situation where the game's just over. That was a much bigger one-sided map. Let's take a look at the replay.
Yeah, so this is at that point we were talking about where actually Gunba kind of had a bit of a saving grace for the team. But RQT going down, he was separated by a Ting. Gunba wouldn't have been able to heal him anyway, so that was actually really great target selection to kind of swing this in their favor. At this point, this is honestly just the case of Hong Kong Attitude can outpace Blank here, and this is the positioning I'm talking about. Eat You Up will convert on Mui a second time, almost immediately after he respawns. Hong Kong Attitude pull back for a moment, and there's the self-destruct from Randy that stops them taking that kind of forecourt area between the choke point and the point itself. And now with Hong Kong Attitude regrouped, they're able to take the fight once again. And they're constantly making Blank play to the beat of their drum rather than letting Blank come in with priority.
You see a situation there where both Gumba and Huss died. RQT then pops a sound barrier, doesn't save either of those two members. Now you're in a very big ultimate, or rather player advantage for Hong Kong Attitude. Mui cleans up Eat You Up instead, so even that 1v1 that Eat Up was winning previously doesn't get won by him this time around. Suddenly only 2 members alive. You have a full back out by Blank. Next time they push, they're into the 90% mark, and just not enough time to make anything happen. Huss dives in with the Dragon Blade, killed almost immediately, doesn't get any kills on his own side, and then Shaolin comes up with a 3 kill for himself.
Yeah, that was really well handled by Hong Kong Attitude. I mean, that's actually now twice they've beat them on what we are consistently calling Blank's best map mode. There are reasons why. There's a lot of reasons why. But I'll be honest, if there's one thing I really want to pick out specifically, Blank's tanks were not covering their DPSs adequately to let them go off. And we were saying the same of Shaolin on Shrine, but we saw just there, when we reached Village, they actually were covering him and he was going off, and it wasn't just the impressive 3K at the end, it was also that dive at the start. It was the overall positioning. Both teams were actually playing fairly similarly on Shrine. That's reflected in the 99-99, but Hong Kong Attitude instantly turned it around and cleaned up, while Blank didn't. And now they have to clean it up by hybrid.
And you also have to consider the small moments there that really put Blank behind. Control is really a game of inches, I believe, because you have very small percentage increases, getting those small parts of progress. Suddenly, 2 fights along the line, you're 40% down, and then the other team's very close to capping up fully. So you have a situation where Eat Up gets blown up by a headshot from Mango Jai. even though that's the only kill, it really slows Blank down. It really forces them to regroup, take their next fight. Then Hong Kong Attitude forced to fight in the courtyard outside of the entrance, away from the camp itself. So Hong Kong Attitude played the pacing and the tempo of the game extremely well. And Blank were constantly on the back foot. They never really had control of dictating where do we want to take the fights, exactly when do we want to go. And Hong Kong Attitude's deciding that every single time.
And there was a really interesting thing as well that happened in there. Actually, map pick coming up now on the Blank side will be King's Row. Nothing all that surprising there, but I wanted to kind of touch on one final thing that I think is a real credit to Hong Kong Attitude. They actually opted to not have Shailin on the Tracer. We tend to talk about him as being basically one of the best tracers in this tournament, and sometimes arguably the best. It was interesting to put Mui on the Tracer, but the thing I really liked about what Hong Kong Attitude did, I'm going to be honest, pound for pound, I Eat You Up outclasses Mui as a Tracer player, and he was able to solo kill him a lot of times, but on the whole, I Eat You Up was not having the same effect as really any of the other members on Hong Kong Attitude. He wasn't able to leverage that into a huge advantage. Mui was often kind of wasting his time, even though the solo kills may look good on paper. And actually the way Hong Kong Attitude kind of almost played damage control was actually a really significant part of them coming out on top there.
And let's not even forget the times when Mui actually did come out on top of I Eat You Up instead. So it wasn't a one-sided affair. It wasn't Eat Up just killing Mui every single time, but it is an issue. I do have to agree, it is definitely, you know, having Shailin on the Genji instead of the Tracer, definitely a bit of a disparity in terms of, you look at him on Tracer, you know he's bringing the goods. Now, when we look at this composition instead, the reason I believe they're running this is the fact that Mui feels more comfortable on Tracer, and so if you're going to run the Tracer Genji, you're going to put Shailin on the Genji instead as the better Genji player, and then Mui's still able to pick up the Tracer instead. So that's the only way they can really make the Tracer Genji work. Otherwise, they kind of pigeonholed into always playing a Doomfist composition, or make sure, or having Mui consistently on the other hit scans such as McCree or Soldier instead. So the way they make Tracer Genji work is like this, but anything else, we're going back to the A level for Hong Kong Attitude. And that is scary too, because I don't believe that was their best composition. It might have been the strategy they wanted to run specifically for Nepal, and you can sort of tell why. But now we get to King's Row, you are going to see Doomfist, you're probably going to see McCree, and by the way, Hong Kong Attitude already beat Blank on this map, specifically the last time they met.
Exactly, yeah, and that's the thing. If nothing else, it demonstrates now a greater flexibility out of Hong Kong Attitude. And like you said, that's not even their strongest team comp that they can bring to the table right now. We are likely to see something more to that tune here on King's Row. It will be Blank, most likely defending first. And yeah, interesting that Blank took them to this map, you're right, given that they lost this one last time they played.
It's also, you know, you got to consider comfort picks for either team. So Blank have their comfort picks as well. And this could be a real composition, so I do want to speak to it quickly. Roadhog and Junkrat were recently buffed, and it is a part of the current tournament patch that we are playing. So Shailin on the Junkrat could be a very real possibility.
This would be interesting to say the least. There is no Soldier on the side of Blank though, so there's a little bit less for Shailin to dislodge, but he can at least put pressure down on Gunba. They're going to be combining that with some hit scan here, so they're really just looking to pressure out Blank's positioning and then take advantage of it with the Reinhardt.
And this is going to be a slow push composition, and already they're able to get the kills. I mean, Gunba, he's just eating the spam. You need the Blank dive to happen already, and suddenly they're able to do that, but now they're just evening up the numbers. They're not really getting player advantage just yet.
Exactly, and that respawn does actually favor Hong Kong Attitude. A Ting is going to be able to rejoin this fight really quickly. They're still waiting for Gunba to kind of steadily float his way over, and he has also opted onto the Zenyatta as well here, which I do very much like, but I'm getting picked.
We'll say though, if anything, a Ting going down is very important because that's the one play that really slows down Hong Kong Attitude. But you're right, he has respawned, he's back into this fight. Randy got a kill as well, so Blank Esports, once again, they're behind as soon as the fight starts.
And the pressure's there. Hulu kind of having to fly away from the point, will stay alive, but they've given up the positioning now. Hong Kong Attitude have claimed it, already third on the point. That's a great pick out on RQT with the sleep dart into the Junkrat damage. And Blank are pretty much on the cusp of being bowled over here. Gunba can only just barely keep these tanks alive, and you can see how long it's been since Hulu last got topped off. Shailin is just raining down terror. That's a nice pulse bomb, but the tempo res is in now from CQB, and this is Hong Kong Attitude taking all of that ground that they have very much earned here. Husk's going to go down before he can take advantage of that Dragon Blade, and Blank may want to come in for a final contest here, but honestly, it's looking like it's just going to go Hong Kong Attitude.
No, absolutely. Hong Kong Attitude, they committed a couple extra ults into there. Blank had nothing to really come back in with. Husk already went down. Had Husk maybe committed a Dragon Blade, we might have seen something different. if he got the kills, and that's even a question mark at that rate, because so far it has been kind of 50-50 on his successes on when he actually decides to go in. But that's interesting to talk about, because you have to address the blank dive. It is a little bit split. You have a situation where Trill goes in first, he dies. Huston goes in second after Trill, he dies. And it's never really coordinated together.
And part of that is the pressure of the Junkrat. It splits up the team, but this is a good dive out of Husk. Honestly, getting Mooey with the combo there as well. That's huge. CQB as well. Was far away from the res, but even if he was close, he's not going to be able to get one off. That was a good bookstore fight out of Blank, and they have a very real opportunity to stall up Hong Kong Attitude here.
In fact, they get a better hold than the bookstore because they get the archway instead. This is still a little bit dangerous because you're up against a lot of AoE damage from Shylin. You're up against a lot of shielding from both the Ting and Randy as well. And very soon, we're back in Resurrection territory. That's when you got to be really concerned for the Blank side. But they, for the time being at least, have a big ultimate advantage. They should be able to get a lot of damage here.
This is very good distance able to be created by Shylin. Going to go up high, looking for the healers on the back line. They've already got Eat You Up though, but he's done the work, and actually Gunba picking the tire is big. Hong Kong Attitude going to be forced back now as Blank commit with the sound barrier. And this is where the slightly lower mobility starts to affect them a little bit, but they are successfully able to back up.
The issue there as well, Hong Kong Attitude, I guess we didn't see it from their perspective, but it didn't look like the rest of the team were really following up on that Riptide. The Riptide went in, Blank Esports backed out, Hong Kong Attitude didn't really make the space they really wanted there. So kind of slow from both teams, but at least Blank Esports, they knew what they had to do.
Yeah, and already, like that's the thing with EU up here, actually, never mind that, is they're really eager for the fight. Is Randy popping out the grab right on top of the team, but they're just not getting much mileage out of it. Finally able to go in. Headshot on Huss is a good opener. The Dead are going a little bit wide though, and he was the full channel, not just the clip refill here. Getting pressured back now by Trill. Blanca really holding on to this well. They're not letting Hong Kong Attitude take the ground for free. Now getting the pressure onto Randy. Gunba going to be the one to get the kill credit. The tempo raises in now from CQB, but instantly a Ting pressured down, was a little bit surrounded on all sides. And like I said, Blank are actually really able to keep the pressure on.
And you got to commend Hulu here because he's nullifying a lot of the damage from Shylin. You had a situation where Randy actually used, talking about damage, now Edup's coming big.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's the thing, right? The only way they can counter out this flanker is Mooey, and if he's not going to hit that flashbang, Edup is going to go off.
Absolutely, but again, you have to go back to the fact that we saw a big Graviton surge from Randy. You have the AoE damage to clean it up. You have Shylin, he's got 2 charges of the car bomb. This should have been a very easy cleanup from the Hong Kong Attitude side, but then you have to commend what Hu was doing. He's able to shut down the majority of damage from Shylin. He's shutting down the damage from Mooey as well. This is what happens when you're running 2 ranged characters like this. You're not really having that very close range dives, that one-hit kill potential that you get with a Doomfist.
Another Rip Tire, and this time he's going to weave it around the backside again, looking for the healers, but Hu is right there. He's going to get Gunba this time around, and they pick out Huss. Now a Ting able to go aggressive, and this is looking like the pressure Hong Kong Attitude have been requiring. Deadeye out as well to apply even more pressure, create that zoning potential as they are able to pick off these last 2, and Hu are going to be demexed at the very end of this. And Hong Kong Attitude with the tank swap up are finally going to be able to get some momentum on their side.
Absolutely, and Blank Esports now, they have an opportunity to try and stall this one out. You had a lot of time bought from Hu, but now you have to have a situation where Troll has to dive right away, has to get followed by Transcendence right away, but it is holdable for Blank. They have the ultimate advantage. Husk can still clean up. They must hold this.
They've got to commit now, and indeed they will, as Trill the first in, and the sound barrier to keep him nice and tidy. As Husk going to go aggressive. Nice bio-nade, but there's no one to capitalize, and Husk is just going to shred through the backliners. Now the relatively immobile Shylin under pressure as well. He was able to back out, but it's drawn Hong Kong Attitude away from the bulk of the fight, and this is all follow-up from Blank. They're not going to get a full route, but look at how much ground Hong Kong Attitude lost, and they've only got a minute to go.
And that's very important. You have to look at the timer here. You also have to look at the progress of the car. When we start getting towards overtime, this is favoring Blank Esports more and more. Not only do they have the ultimate advantage here, so they've rotated properly, but for Hong Kong Attitude, they failed to really charge ultimates. Also, you're heading into the overtime, which means your respawns start to really count, and you're disadvantaged in that fashion as well.
Again, Shylin getting picked off. Eat You Up actually got stuck in the trap for a moment there, but no one could follow up once again, and what a route onto a Ting, even less time. And Hong Kong Attitude, they swapped to the more mobile tanks, but they are starting to really suffer for the less mobile DPSs, and instantly Shylin's going to change.
It is, and we may be seeing changes at the last minute when it is a little bit too late. For Hong Kong Attitude, 23 seconds remaining. You're not really going to get Shylin with the pulse bomb. You're going to have a couple really good fights fights at that, but it is ultimate time for Hong Kong Attitude. If they're going to win at any time, it has to be right now. Blank Esports are down on ultimates. This is their chance.
This is nice positioning out of Blank, though. They're going to make Hong Kong Attitude expend ultimates just to get to the cart. They're going to make them fight for every inch of ground through these streets. And Hong Kong Attitude are going to be split. The sound barrier is going to cover some, but you can see Blank trying to cut off the column. The sound barrier is there to try and get Hong Kong Attitude to the point. They've also expanded the self-destruct, and Randy getting pressured out of the mech. No one from Blank dead just yet. The positioning is a little split, but now the capitalization has not come through from Hong Kong Attitude, and Blank can start going on the aggressive. The pick on the Shailin is there as Randy's the mech. A Ting hasn't got the extra health bar. Now Mui's got no coverage for the Deadeye. He can't use it, has to try and win it with sheer DPS. Now he's going to do the Deadeye as a last ditch, but Blank no better. Eat You Up, going to follow it up, and that's going to be a full hold for 4.B from Blank Esports.
And Eat Up went really large here. This has been his map so far. He's got to be the guy to talk about on the Blank Esports side. You have situations where the tanks were able to make a lot more space, and then using that space, Eat Up was able to get a ton of kills on most of the fights that actually happened. But I think it was for Hong Kong Attitude, though. They were, I guess, they met their demise at their own hands. They had a sort of composition at the start. I believe it worked quite well. They were able to slow push, able to get a lot of damage down with Shailin. As soon as you went to streets, though, here's where a couple of the problems started coming in. You're using the Riptide, but you're not having the follow-up. On the one hand, they're not faster to follow up. On the other hand, your composition doesn't really allow it. You're running Reinhardt Zaya. You're not going to be able to really chase after that Riptide. This is why you go into the Diva. This is why you go into the Winston as well. You're a lot more mobile. You actually get a lot more space for Shailin in doing that, and you can sort of see the reasoning behind these sort of picks. But by the time you get to that kind of mobile tank pick, and then suddenly at the end, Shailin changes on to Tracer as well, everything that is important for Hong Kong Attitude to change up happens far too late.
Yeah, exactly. And unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to mention it at the time because honestly, that was pretty breakneck out of Blank. But after cracking that point, first of all, Blank still had good numbers. They hadn't gone in for a final contest and got absolutely routed out, which was a saving grace. But also Hong Kong Attitude, without having that highly mobile team comp, couldn't make the extra space for the payload. And they had to slow push through streets phase. And I actually think Blank handled it really well given that. And then on top of that, we're consistently winning fights. And we actually saw Hong Kong Attitude having the most success, like you said, when they were able to swap onto the higher mobility, not even just for the offense, but also the retreat, honestly.
So this is rather when you have to go back to the original reason why Hong Kong Attitude beat Blank specifically on this map. It was Shailin on the Tracer countering out Huss on that Doomfist. This time around, we didn't see Tracer until the end. We didn't see Huss on Doomfist at all. You also had a situation where Mui was consistently headshotting IU up with the McCree. That wasn't happening this time around.
This is different. They're going to go in with a triple shield comp and a Bastion. This is a smart read because they know Hong Kong Attitude favor the Reinhardt Zarya defense here, and they're going to get him set up with as much breathing room as possible. This is nearly impossible for Shailin and Mui to dive onto.
And it is actually impossible because the Ting is not going to get there. Randy's not going to get there either. You just don't have the support of their tank. So for Blank Esports, they read the defense of Hong Kong Attitude correctly. Now it's about getting the camp pressure and actually capping the point itself.
Exactly. They just have to sit on the point, and Hong Kong Attitude can either give it away completely and stay out of sight of the Bastion, or contest the point and get in the side of Bastion. Now without Mui, there is even less of an opportunity to dive this, and unless Mango Jai is somehow able to thread the needle and get a sleep dart onto I Eat You Up, the pressure will be unrelenting, and it shows. Blank already on the big aggression here, and look at how much charge Huwu has. Is going to get pressured out by Shailin, but still the pressure is there by Blank on the point itself.
So this is where it does turn around maybe for Hong Kong Attitude because they get the kill onto Huwu. When you start losing the tanks, you start losing the camp pressure. Now you're seeing the rest of Blank actually charge on the cap itself. Trill goes down as well. This is falling apart.
This is the opening they need, and the hammer down from a Ting is huge. Great sleep out of Gunba, but not going to be enough to save the day just yet, as an equally good sleep from Mango Jai lands down. That was quite a slow setup. They do get 2/3. You can debate for years over whether or not that's worth it, but at any rate, Blank on the cusp of breaking this.
Absolutely, but at the same time, I think for Hong Kong Attitude, they're on the cusp of holding as well because now they're set up in a position. Ultimates are coming online, specifically defensive ultimates. You can also play aggressively now as well. I don't think you let Blank get the same setup as before. If you do, they're going to have to play a slow game, and this is part of breaking that setup for Blank.
And Blank have all the high pressure ultimates they need to break this through, but Gunba was one of them. And without that, honestly, a Ting getting very aggressively, but Eat You Up has been able to set up. He needs to be careful here. These members of Hong Kong Attitude, a Ting is able to retreat as is Shailin, and it's going to be the sound barrier to cover that, but now they are in full full retreat, indeed in disarray as Shylin gets picked. This is such chaos. Then Hong Kong Attitude are going to get completely caught out for it as the pressure is coming in from all sides. They're barely held on this far, but now they are about to break. The point will go the way of Blank Esports. Final contest may come out from Mui, but he's going to opt not to. And Hong Kong Attitude, unlike Blank, will not be able to go for a corner hold.
And this is unexpected from Hong Kong Attitude because they had the better engagement. They got the original kill on Gumba. Get rid of one of the supports. These tanks can't sustain themselves when half of your healing is entirely gone out of your squad. But Hong Kong Attitude, they outstepped themselves. They got a little bit too aggressive. A team wanted to charge in there. Fortify came out from Huss, immediately blocked that out. And then Blank Esports turned around that aggression, clean up the kills. Instead, Hong Kong Attitude, how did they win that original engagement? They were patient. This time around, they were not patient and they got punished.
Blank are doing this. They're sticking with this. The difference is it's easy to get flanked, but that is a great graviton out of Huwu to completely nullify that Nano Blade combo. Eat You Up will go down to Mui at the end of that all, but honestly, Hong Kong Attitude are solidly getting routed here. Mui can contest this for quite a long time, so they won't get heaps of room. Actually, that's a really nicely timed pick for them. They will actually get some room off this now. They do need to wait for Eat You Up to get back on that payload.
And by the way, Orisa did get buffed in this patch as well, so we are now seeing the effects of all of these buffs come in.
The higher projectile speed.
You have a position where, you know, you have a position where Junkrat's getting played. You're now seeing Orisa getting played as well. And so far for Hong Kong Attitude, this is a bit of a blitz attack from Blank Esports so far. We're not seeing that much resistance out of Hong Kong Attitude. On top of that, their ultimates have completely depleted outside of Mui.
This is so genius. Because of where the payload is, Blank can actually sit back and fight Hong Kong Attitude on their terms, then move on to the payload when they've got the ground. This is really nicely done. That's the open up, but they do lose Eat You Up. The pressure is in from Trill with that sound barrier on as well. Looking to get that Earth Shatter as quickly as possible. They lose the Supercharger rather, out of Huss, but that's not too big a deal. Huss himself, very hard to dislodge here, and Hubu's on the cusp of having huge charge. Atinga's going to have to get a ton of work done, but he does open up nicely on RQT, finds Gunba in the mix as well, and now can throw the tanks into disarray, who are lacking their healers, and without that DPS, he's going to run amok. That is a good hold out of Hong Kong Attitude.
And Hong Kong Attitude only need to pick up a couple of kills to be able to really get ahead of Blank Esports, because this is a very a static kind of push to coming out of Blank Esports, very heavily reliant on cart control. When the cart control is gone, you don't get a situation where you can put an Orisa barrier in front of the cart, set you up in Sentry form as well. You have to play a much more mobile game, and Hong Kong Attitude are not going to let you do that. So that's actually the weakest part now of Blank Esports lineup in terms of their composition, when you don't actually have the cart. So again, have to watch out.
Mui's fishing for a pulse bomb, but he hasn't realized Eat You Up has his ultimate and is likely going to be going in with that when they go in. He's got a window now, but if he doesn't take it, Blank are going to get priority on this fight. There goes the pulse bomb in, but they're going to survive through it as the sound barrier is good to hold Hong Kong Attitude steady through that grab, but no, the open up now there. And honestly, Mui can only do so much work. Positioned as he is on the back line, will pick off Eat You Up, but this time Blank aren't headless without the 1 DPS. They've still got Huss in the mix, and he will take down Mui. He's, so close, but the sound barrier going to save his bacon, and they're still underway here. Good sleep on him, but they don't have the pressure to follow up, and Trill is on guard. Shylin Indo is going to be able to pick it off, and the pressure is in from Ating and Randy as well. On the cusp of breaking Hong Kong Attitude, strike back, and now Blank lacking in the time department.
And we're seeing the same story reveal itself again for Hong Kong Attitude. They were in a very similar position. Now suddenly you want to change up composition, but you have no time. Blank Esports, this is when they have to change up everything. You've realized the Orisa Bastion composition isn't going to work anymore. They actually should have realized that as soon as they lost the cart the first time around, because again, you have to have the cart to get the mobility to really make use of the sentry mode on the Bastion. Otherwise, it just really falls apart. So both of these teams so far kind of failing to identify when is the best time to change.
Mui's trying the same one again, but this time Huss is aware of it and was actually waiting for it. The dive steal is going to come into Gunba while they got that window, and Huss is busy, and Shylin opening up as well. These backliners are Blank, totally exposed. No counter kill in just yet. They demech Randy, but they've lost Huss. They need to back off quick, smart, and maybe they have one last shot.
And I think they can still do it because, you know, this is the composition that can go toe-to-toe with what Hong Kong Attitude is doing. Mui now does have the first ultimate between both of these teams, so that might be the deciding factor. Blank Esports coming in completely dry.
This pulse bomb could be absolutely huge out of Mui. Who's he going to look for? Blank have no ultimates here. This is very dangerous. Pulse bomb totally wide though. That is a saving grace for them. But Gunba again getting picked early. It is now rough stuff for Blank as they lose Huss. The pressure is just too good from these Hong Kong Attitude tanks. And the payload has not got the progress. They need to get some kills converted quickly here, Blank. And they can't even kill Shylin as low as 7 health. Hong Kong Attitude on the cusp of holding. Last ditch out of Huwu here with the self-destruct. Will find Mui, but there's just no follow-up. Barely remix and instantly gets popped back out as Gunba on the soldier, legging it to the point, but they will not get there in time, and Hong Kong Attitude holding just shy of where they got held themselves, but it is what counts in the end, and they do pick up the win.
Absolutely, Hong Kong Attitude, that was extremely good for them, and you have to look at both teams. Both teams did, you want to commend both teams for the fact that they were very creative. Both teams came out with something a little bit different. On the Hong Kong Attitude side, that was the fact that they had the Junkrat composition, very slow with the shields. On the Blank side, they went with a different sort of shield composition, more turret-based. This is when you see the Orisa, this is when you see the Bastion. And on A, you have a position where both teams, through creativity, have a great run. But it is when you get to Streets phase, it all falls apart. But for Hong Kong Attitude, it falls in their favor.
Yeah, and indeed, you certainly felt out of both of these teams that there was an opportunity for both of them to swap up, and frankly, neither did at the opportune time. But like you said, at the end of it, it's Hong Kong Attitude that do come out the top of that one, and well-deserved too.
2-0 victory now for both teams, and it's you know, it really came down to the wire for both of the situations, and it is very interesting when you consider that essentially both teams had the exact same run. Despite extremely different compositions, the exact same run through that attack. Exactly what they pulled off was mirrored on the other side. Again, not in terms of composition, but in terms of the feeling and also the pacing. And the storyline of that game, which is essentially great creativity winning them A, but then failing to identify when they need to change on B when it wasn't working. Let's take a look now at the replay.
So this is essentially where Hong Kong Attitude do ultimately get held up. This is the maximum distance they ever reach. And they still have quite a bit of time, but like I said, we see the lack of mobility start to hurt them. They've swapped the tanks off at this point, but it's not enough because Shailen and Mui have to sit a long, long way back. And honestly, they still need to be present in the fight. So you can either sit forward and leave your healers exposed so that you can be in the fight, or you can sit back and basically not be present in the fight at all, and you're likely to lose it anyway. This is really where the composition just hamstrung them.
And for Blank as well, they got pushed back quite a long distance prior to that replay sort of happening, and you had a situation when Huwu stopped up the cart, he stalled out with his mech, he had a really long respawn, but he bought enough time for the rest of Blank to get together and set up their next defense. Then it was Blank essentially running Trill in as the solo tank, running him with the Transcendence immediately to buff him up and make sure that he was going to stay alive, giving time for then Huwu to respawn and rejoin that fight. And they had the ultimate advantage. Blank were in a winning position because they stopped up the card at the right time, just shy of capping second, and also with the ultimate advantage of them overpowering a Hong Kong Attitude side who just didn't really have the tools to get it across the line.
Yeah, that was a really interesting defense actually, because Blank were more consistently chipping away time from Hong Kong Attitude. They were in general winning the engages, but because of the nature of the composition, Hong Kong Attitude were always able to gain some momentum, even as they were losing that same space as they were losing fights. Blank, by comparison, were largely uncontested until they were fully held. So very different in some regards, but kind of equally consistent insofar as when Hong Kong Attitude did find that defense point, they were able to hold it every single fight.
I believe so as well, because it goes back to the point where that Bastion of Orisa composition is heavily dependent on card. If you can sit on the cart, sit your Bastion Sentry on there, get the Orisa shield in front, and just roll on through, that's when it looks really strong. But if you're just a regular team composition walking through the streets of London, it's not the same story. The cart's too far ahead, you don't get the free ride on top of it, you don't just get to set up the sentry where you want to, you have to be put in a very awkward position, and that composition is also weak around a good surround, so area control is important. You have a situation where Hong Kong Attitude gets a good surround and a good flank around Blank Esports. If you're a Bastion, you shoot in one direction, you're not gonna be, you can't handle multiple targets coming at you from all sorts.
There was a really interesting moment there as well, where actually I Eat You Up got picked off quite late in a fight. It was kind of this last hurrah out of Hong Kong Attitude, and actually it ended up being their exact saving grace, because he took a long time to get back to the cart. The rest of the team was on it, and it's counterintuitive, but technically Blank should have got off the cart so they could reset up the Bastion. It just so happened to be that by the time Eat You Up was back, the cart was in a perfect position for Hong Kong Attitude to engage, and they did. It was actually very nicely handled by Hong Kong Attitude.
We're going to finish up 2 maps now in favor of Hong Kong Attitude. The second round robin is off to a good start for this team. Blank Esports, however, still not yet in a position where they can get back their revenge. The third map will be coming up very soon. It's going to be the Assault. It goes to Hong Kong Attitude's pick as well, and that all happens after this break. Thanks for sticking through that break with us as we're about to head into map 3 of the opening match of round robin number 2. It is Hong Kong Attitude taking on Blank Esports, and so far, Hong Kong Attitude 2-0 in the lead, but certainly not as comfortable as the last time we saw these two teams.
Yeah, Nepal was interesting. I mean, they definitely came out the better of those two teams pretty much unequivocally, but Kings Row really just, it kind of felt like the team that had the slightly cleaner play, while on the whole, neither were completely clean, which is this interesting kind of territory to be in. But I mean, for what it's worth, you know, who wins is what matters, and it's Hong Kong Attitude 2-0 up. They're now at match point, and the reason that matters, it's now their map pick, and we're going to Assault, which we often say is Blank's weakest game mode. One thing I do want to touch on, though, at the end of the last round robin, Blank were actually quite upfront in saying, look, we just haven't practiced Assault enough. I would like to think that, therefore, in this week just been, they will have done a lot of time practicing it. But Hong Kong Attitude taking no prisoners. This has got to be the toughest map here for Blank. They're going to take them to Hanamura.
Exactly, because I did want to mention, look, if you're Blank and you have been practicing Assault, hopefully you've been practicing your weakest Assault maps, and that's got to be Hanamura, because you're good in Volskaya, you're fairly reasonable in Horizon Lunar Colony as well. Temple of Anubis kind of 50-50, but Hanamura has always been a bit of a negative crutch for this team. They just have not had good successes whatsoever on Hanamura.
Which is funny because they actually have the record for the fastest full cap, points A and B, in a professional Overwatch LAN
I'm fairly
game.
sure they still have it, but...
Yeah, I would be surprised if they don't, but certainly they set a record for that during the playoffs run. So it's funny, definitely their weakest map, and also they went on to lose that game. Don't forget that, because it went to Time Bank and they lost it there. But despite this being their worst map on their worst mode, they still had that record for fastest double.
Well, everyone has a shining moment. I think for Blank, you know, they're definitely not shy from having shining moments like that, but they need to be able to pull something again to get this big win. You have to really think about the last time we saw Blank on an Assault, which was only last week, and that was the Horizon Lunar Colony game against AHQ, if I'm not mistaken. And what was it, a 6-minute time bank in favor of AHQ, and Blank just barely, you know, they barely got their way through that map, and it was just such a good map for AHQ, even on one of Blank's better Assault maps. So now we're on Blank's technically, statistically worse Assault map. This is where you got to think maybe they struggle, and maybe it's a 3-0 victory for Hong Kong Attitude.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, it's statistically, and as much as this comes more down to opinion, arguably it's also just gameplay-wise their weakest map. I mean, as much as the results speak for themselves, you know, you can see it there right on the screens when they do play on Hanamura. They've got a lot to kind of address here. I wouldn't be surprised if this is Hong Kong Attitude opting to defend first, but this is actually a map where if I were Hong Kong Attitude, I'd actually feel quite comfortable attacking first.
I think you just feel quite comfortable in general, and you know, without trying to beat up
you got your slippers on.
Without trying to beat a dead horse here, because I know we do speak about Blank's Assault record a lot, but you are right in the sense their record and the statistics and the win-loss really speak for themselves, and you can't really argue against that.
That's one precarious Lucio.
He's only got 1 foot technically on.
Like barely.
And sometimes no feet.
Sometimes no feet as he rotates, but he didn't fall off. That would have been embarrassing. It is Hong Kong Attitude going to opt for the defense first, and this is interesting. They're opting into a Sombra.
Which kind of says they want to hold on to A for quite a long time here. So you have the good front line from the 2 shielding tanks, then you have the Sombra at the back line, you have the health pack control. EMP is how they want to win this against Blank.
Yeah, Blank on the other hand just going all aggression here, and honestly so far it's working. That's a good bio grenade they want to eat you up in Huss, but the follow-up on a Ting is there anyway, and Huss is just starting to run rampant on this backline. That Sombra health pack is only going to do so much work, just kind of has to kind of sidestep out the potential sleep dart, and actually maybe stuck around too long in there because Randy was able to get some kills, got some charge, but the kill comes through anyway.
And by the way, this is the most difficult fight for Hong Kong Attitude. This is when you are running, I guess, less than 2 DPSs, Mui on the Sombra. You're not going to get as much done until EMP does come up. EMP is available now, and
he has
been
to commit.
committed.
He's low on health though, so he can't follow it up himself, and the rest of the team's only just arriving. They're not in an ideal position. The EMP already run out now as the team is able to pressure on this point itself. Blank actually hold the ground now, as much as Hong Kong Attitude still hold these health packs. And it's on Hong Kong Attitude to attack on the point itself. Good pick onto Huss. Humu gets demexed. Quick smart. That is great follow-up out of Shaolin there. And Blank actually on the cusp of capping get routed off. That was a surprise.
Well, you gotta really look at players like Mangujai, who stood his ground despite everyone going down around him him. He was able to stay alive. You have a situation where Hong Kong Attitude stalled out the cap long enough that only 2/3 went through for Blank. Then Mui comes back with EMP. Then the ultimates start to come online. Mango Jai used the nano boost onto Randy as well. And suddenly for Blank Esports, they're still charging. They're not ready for this push.
Pulse Bomb out, doesn't quite catch Gunboat and RQT. Good news for Blank, and they can move in on the point. There's still a window before EMP comes up, but it is probably going to be up over the course of this fight unless they pick Mui.
And the timing is important,
That's
and
a
the
good
timing
one.
looks even better when Randy goes down to Gumbo.
No grab.
Now you have a situation where there's a lot of ultimates on the Blank Esports side, and here comes the commit.
Yeah, this is really clean out of the Mui. May be able to get an EMP again. This is actually Huss potentially making the same mistake. This time he does convert onto Mango Jai, but I'll be honest, that was still very dangerous. You are fighting in his territory with that hacked health pack, but point broken, and actually with the delayed kill, now Blank have a huge snowball opportunity.
Absolutely, but they do lose the Transcendence as well, so not super clean. They still come in with 5. Hong Kong Attitude still don't have enough, but the EMP, you're absolutely right. That could end everything.
Instantly cancels out the sound barrier. Trill does not quite use the Primal Rage as they go even there, picking out Shaolin. That is really unfortunate for him. And now Blank actually may lose that snowball opportunity altogether with Huwu being demeched, opts not to use the self-destruct. In fact, I think he may have actually been hacked. Could have been the reason that wasn't able to come out, and that's going to delay them a lot.
And this is probably the best case scenario for Hong Kong Attitude because Blank Esports committed half their ults. They saved the other half the ultimates. And the big one was the EMP countering out Sam Barry entirely, who as well going for the reset onto the mix. So for Blank Esports, the momentum isn't fully lost, but a good portion is because the most important part of this attack has to come from the supports. You need support ultimates, you need sustain, and that's the one thing they do not have.
And Mui is essentially into friendly territory now. Should be able to cycle those EMPs fairly well. Hanamura is the toughest map for Sombra in general, so may not get one exactly on every fight.
And that's why it's strange to see Sombra in general, because there isn't the good health packs to really get the quick charges on. Despite that, though, Mui wants to make it work, and certainly, if it is working, then it is working.
Yeah, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But Blank could just kind of fix it up themselves. And already getting pressure on the point. Edu up, that's a great pick on Mango Jai, taking that off the table. And Randy demech before he gets the self-destruct.
They need a sound barrier.
They desperately need a sound barrier, but they don't have it. Transcendence out from Gunba. Mango Jai finally rejoining this one, but that sound barrier disappeared so quickly, the damage out, and Huwu getting that pick in there as well. This is a great opener from Blank, already a third on the point, and they've got these trickle kills in the right order, but this Nano Blade could change all that right now. Huss does get Mango Jai, and Shaolin actually not getting too much with this. Will demech Huwu, but is in a lot of trouble. Good close in from Huss there, as Moby getting back onto this. EMP can close this one out to stabilize Hong Kong Attitude, just shy of Blank capping 2/3.
The thing is for Hong Kong Attitude is they just get enough, despite, they have a very tough run, Blank Esports, they get a lot of damage done. They get a tick on through. Maybe Blank can come in and get a second tick. Hong Kong Attitude, where they failed is Mui doesn't have the EMP a decent amount of time, and that's because we're on Hanamura. That's because, as already mentioned, very difficult map defensively to get the EMPs really running. And Blank Esports, they're able to poke holes in this defense consistently, but guys like Shaolin, able to pick up the return kills, and you only need a few return kills for the defense to really come back in a big force.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's really only been just enough for Hong Kong Attitude to hold on, but it has been enough. Blank can still play for thirds very easily, but Shaolin has something to say about that. Good defense matrix there. Sound barrier out doesn't quite catch all the members of Blank here, but they pressure out Shaolin, does just barely get away to the health pack though, and now the pressure's going to come up onto Eat You Up, who's trying to set up on the high ground, but he's now been able to kind of set up there pretty uncontested, even as a team dives him. He's now very isolated from his own team, but he steps off the healing. Mui gets a cheeky headshot in the middle of that one, and this should be Blank immediately getting repelled.
And this needed to be a fight that Blank really take advantage of, because this is when EMP isn't a factor. We've already identified when EMP's online for Mui. That's when Hong Kong Attitude have a very big advantage. That's when they're able to really hold on, because so far they've been saved by the EMP multiple times. So for Blank Esports, they had that opportunity. That opportunity is now gone. You expect Blank to now lose the next fight, which means they're only going to have about a minute left when they come in if they lose that fight.
This is a pretty extreme position for Blank to be in now. It's going to be quite a hard point to crack, and they've maybe got just enough time to do like 3 or 4 fights and wear down the ultimates.
Definitely not
play
4.
with thirds, but yeah, actually you're right, not 4. And now probably not even 3 either. They've really got to hit the go button and get picks.
And by the way, Hong Kong Attitude is so well stocked now. They've managed to build up such a big advantage after coming in from absolutely nothing. As soon as EMP comes down, you got to expect Hong Kong Attitude to come out again.
There it goes. And Randy instantly converts with the self-destruct as the Shaolin. Good discipline out of Blank to hold on to most of their ultimates, but Gunba actually going to pop the Transcendence. Leaves them a little bit lacking on that one for the next fight. Hong Kong Attitude still have windows to hold further.
And again, best case scenario for Hong Kong Attitude is a situation when Blank Esports do use ultimates. Last time, the first attack, it was when support ultimates were used. used. This time around, support ultimates used. So Blank Esports, you got to get the sustain. How are you going to cap this one out comes down to your supports. Yes, your DPSs have to get the kills. Yes, your tanks have to make the space, but those players can die. You have to face 2 waves of defense from Hong Kong Attitude, and the only way you get that through is by sustain on supports.
Us looking to pick Mui, just goes shy there and is now going to get pressured by a Ting. We'll be able to retreat to the team here. A Ting actually opts to follow up here, and that's very smart with the sleep coming through and eat you up. Means they couldn't capitalize on the pressure with a Ting not being with the team. Trill has the ult just to stay alive, but they're still waiting for Huss to regroup anyway. They get a counter pick on CQB, but I don't know what Blank are looking for here. Now to boost onto a Ting, but he goes shy, and suddenly there's this opening window for Blank to commit, and Mui going down even as the EMP comes out. Gunba scraping through alive, and they pick a Ting, so no further follow-up. Suddenly Blank can actually break this point because Hong Kong Attitude, for the first time so far, didn't cycle cleanly. Self-destruct, not going to get anything except for Huwu's mech, but he's going to throw out his own self-destruct anyway. They're on the point with 2/3, and now they can't dislodge EU up here, Hong Kong Attitude. They're really going all in on it, but it's not going to happen. Actually, a Ting will get Gunba. Never mind, they do dislodge him now. They force him well off that high ground. Huss needs to totally go off, but he's found nothing with the Dragon Blade and isn't getting the frags. And again, just shy of that final third. Blank getting repelled with no time left.
And Shailin now has a Dragon Blade instead. CQB's got the sound barrier. That was the first time we see Mui use an EMP, and it to have not a very big effect. Blank Esports survived the EMP, but it was the follow-up that really failed for them. They didn't get any kills. Huss used a Dragon Blade, didn't see anything come up on the kill feed. Now it's Shailin's turn, and we already know who gets kills.
Last ditch, no time to set up, no time to get EU up on the high ground. They've just got to go, and Hong Kong Attitude have laid the trap. Now Blank gonna essentially march right into it. Dragon Blade on the back line, but the pressure's there. The transcendence is big from Gunba. Sound barrier does save Shailin's life, but he won't convert off the Dragon Blade. But that was all Blank had to work with. EU up is never going to get a good position for the tac visor, but he's able to open out anyway and get some damage. EMP is there, and Shailin does convert. That's so huge. Huwu's mech too, and Trill can stall with this primal rage, but he opts not to. He didn't press the button in time. My goodness, or maybe was even hacked, but at any rate, it will be Blank getting repelled. 92.1, nothing to laugh at, but they are not going to convert that last cap.
And certainly a 92.1 is a position that they can still win from. 92.1 is nearly getting through, but nearly isn't a camp. Like you've already mentioned, Hong Kong Attitude, one good attack where they can actually push through and actually get the 92.1. That's going to be a victory in their hands. The only thing you have to really look at from the Hong Kong Attitude side is it wasn't the cleanest defense, yet they still won. This has to now go back to Nepal. Not the cleanest village you ever saw, not the cleanest shrine you ever saw, but they still won. Blank still just behind, despite mistakes made by the opposite side.
This is really interesting, especially on that point B. Hong Kong Attitude basically lived and died by their own plays there. When Blank were getting thirds, except for the one fight where they had a huge ultimate advantage, it was generally because Hong Kong Attitude either, missed a Winston dive or an ultimate, didn't get enough mileage and little things like that. But then they would immediately turn it back around. That's the living by their own plays with something like a 3K out of Shailin. This is a Hong Kong Attitude that with a bit more cleanliness could be looking really dominant, but the lack of cleanliness is a window that Blank can take advantage of.
And that's the concerning part because despite the lack of cleanliness, they are winning. And that's when you got to question Blank. They're not able to poke holes in this defense. They had a couple good moments. That's when they went in while EMP was down. They got that initial third. They were able to get the second third. They push it to 92%, but it's not good enough. And we haven't even seen the best players out of Shailin just yet because on that Genji, it was very risky. You have a situation where you have the Dragon Blade come out right at the end in Blank's final push. However, Shailin did just get shut down. He had the sound barrier back up, but his Dragon Blade had already run out. That's a situation that is very punishable. That should have been a Shailin death, but for Blank Esports, unable to pick it up, and Shailin still gets 3 kills despite Dragon Blade running out.
Blank have come very close to first holding teams, though, on Hanamura Point A. That is not something that should be forgotten, but with Mui on this Widowmaker, all they need is 1 or 2 good picks to open this one up.
Got to be quite patient about that as well. I think for Hong Kong Attitude, you have the time to play with. You can't be complacent, but certainly you are afforded a little bit of comfort.
Good pressure by Randy to kind of steer the team in safely, and they've opened a bit of space for Mui, but Eat You Up not going to let up the pressure, and he's able to find a bit of a chink in the armor there. Good dive onto Mui as well to dislodge him, and they can only afford to do that because Eat You Up has been keeping this other pressure on, so Hong Kong Attitude kind of stalled up on the side here.
Absolutely is, but eventually you have a situation where Trill has to go back to his own team, and then Mui opens up his own sight lanes again. So for Hong Kong Attitude, they're getting aggressive now, and they're getting kills.
That's a big follow-up from Shailin, but they are going to go even. Blank recognizes recognize that they have to get aggressive now, or they could get overrun, so they go aggressive. Shylin able to demech Huwu though, and Huss and Eat You Up are both having a bit of trouble. Movie's now got this covered in terms of sightlines. Pick on a Ting is good for them. And they close out on Shylin. That's big. The Transcendence as well means those headshots won't do anything. And Randy going to get demeched on the side. Blank can bleed a lot of time off the clock with that Baby Diva.
Yeah, that was a really critical Transcendence coming out of Gumbo, right at the right time for Blank Esports to make sure they hold on. But also for Mui, you expect a couple more shots to hit. You expect a kill to come out. You're in a situation you're not getting pressured by Eat Up. You're not getting pressured by Trill as well. You have complete free reign in terms of sightlines. We need to see more out of that Widowmaker.
The thing that was good about Blank's overall defense there is when they had to convert, they recognized it and they didn't hesitate. That's actually some of the cleanliness they've so far lacked since picking up these new members. It's good to see that finally starting to come in for this team.
So far, this has been a pretty good hold from Blank Esports because by now, Hong Kong Attitude, look, they already pushed on, well, rather than Hong Kong Attitude, they already lost.
Instantly getting Mui. That's actually a very good trade because those sidelines are now not covered. And it's right as Hong Kong Attitude chose to go aggressive. He's going to have to put the blade away, but they're actually happy with that one. A Ting gets the pressure down onto Gunba, but there's going to be a lot of ultimates forced out of Hong Kong Attitude to get on the point now. And this is the opportunity for Blank to again close the door as instantly they pick Shylin. Again, the opportunity is recognized and the conversion is there out of them as well. Getting the pressure now onto the tanks. Huwu can use the self-destruct here to preserve the mech, and Trill going to do the same with the Primal Rage. They just want to run down the clock and draw ultimates out of Hong Kong Attitude. That's exactly what they're doing as they bleed out Mango Jai as well. Hong Kong Attitude, they're going to have to commit everything just to give themselves a chance, and they may not even get over the line with that either. Randy isn't going to get back in the mech. Hong Kong Attitude far too lean on members now.
And this is when Mui changes up, and it does look like King's Row all over again. You have a situation when you've barely got enough time to push, and now this is when you want to change up compositions, but it is still better late than never. And for Mui, onto the McCree, we already know he can hit his shots, and he's going to need to because he didn't hit any on Widowmaker.
That's a big pick, and gets a flashbang on Huss. He's not going to get that kind of flanking position. Great follow-up from Shylin. That's what Hong Kong Attitude have been looking for, and they completely new to Blank. Now, as much as Blank may have recognized that they need to go in now, they don't have the members to follow it up. Huwu going to get flashbanged as he gets demeched and an instant headshot as well, and that will at last be the break on point A out of Hong Kong Attitude.
And there will be no follow-up from Blank Esports. No one going on a suicide mission here. No one willing to make the hero play, and that's probably the smart move. But you do see the impact. As soon as Mui goes on to the McCree, instant impact, gets the shots on, gets the flashbangs on, and Hong Kong Attitude just breeze on through that A like it was nothing. Now, Blank Esports, though, they have a good hold position because the ultimates are online for them. They got to aggress first, though, because otherwise you have a situation where Hong Kong Attitude can cap out.
And this time there will be no surprise flashbangs on Huss. He should be able to convert here unless something goes horribly wrong. But he might not need to. The pressure is here anyway. They're happy to trade Trill for a Ting because of that respawn advantage. Actually, Huss may be a little bit too pressured there, but in any case, Hong Kong Attitude, they're just going to have to keep doing this until Blank commit ultimates, and Blank don't have to commit ultimates if they keep trading even.
And mind you, Hong Kong Attitude is using this time to charge their own ultimates. They need time to build up here because they understand Blank Esports are ahead. They are working with a lot less time than Blank had on their own attack, so they can't, again, when you look at a situation like A, they had a little bit of comfort because they knew they had enough time to work with. This time on B, they have a much less time, so they have to go now.
They absolutely do. Shylin looking to get the flank in, and they're trying to set up a good position for this Deadeye. Nice hiding to avoid the Dragon Blade dive. That's a sick flashbang, and the follow-up onto Eat You Up is big out of them. Now here's the Deadeye, but the dive is in from Trill. Oh, Huss with the deflect as well. Really putting it in when it counts, and that's instantly going to stop Hong Kong Attitude up short here as they lose Randy's mech as well. Absolutely no conversion out of anything they committed, and Blank are still holding on to all these ultimates.
And that could have been a very different situation because you saw the flashbang from Mui onto Huss. That should have been a kill. He doesn't clean up Huss. Huss then retaliates with a deflect onto the Deadeye. If Huss already went down, we could have seen a lot of kills from that Deadeye. Now Mui's had enough. Switching onto this third hero of the map so far, onto the Soldier, and he needs to find setup here. Completely resets his ultimate. 3 minutes left to go. It's not a lot of time.
Yeah, respecting that he just needs that extra bit of damage output and self-healing with that Soldier up on that high ground. Eat You Up, good pulse bomb into the mix. Double kill as well. Instantly going to stop this one up for Hong Kong Attitude, excuse me, and the route coming out of Blank as well. Suddenly, Hong Kong Attitude have lost about half the time they had, and they nearly got full held at A as well, so that wasn't a lot of time to begin with.
And they need a winning situation where they can build the support ultimates most importantly, and make sure they get into a situation where Blank do not have support ultimates.
That is a big force.
Right now, this is the complete opposite of that, and you're right, a big force.
Yeah, forcing out the self-destruct is what we mean. That's now off the table for Randy. And again, they don't mind Huss dying. They're at a numerical disadvantage, but he's going to respawn, come straight back in.
They got the time as well, because Huss is very close to that ultimate. Trill has already used the primal rage here. Certainly, this is now when Blank Esports got to commit, because Gumba already went down.
There it is, though. The trade instantly onto Mango Giant again. Going even is fine for the defense. This is actually now on Hong Kong attitude to convert, and they're out of resources to do so with Sholin's Pulse Bomb not getting enough work done. Self-destruct lacking in Randy, and there for Huru, the pressure disparity is massive. Gumba able to Transcendence as well. This is so huge for Blank. They're still kind of going even, but actually, that just means Hong Kong attitude lose time because their defender's advantage. Huss able to open up just to close it out. They can use these ultimates here if they want. They do lose some members, but again, there aren't enough members from Hong Kong attitude to convert, even as Mango Jai rejoins this fight. He is only rejoining one tank, one DPS, one healer, and Blank respawning back in, gonna beat back the tide again. Hong Kong attitude severely lacking in time.
And that needed to be a winning situation for Hong Kong attitude, because already RQT and Gumba used both their ultimates. Now CQB and Mango Jai finally charge up their own support ultimates. Hong Kong attitude, they didn't save enough members. CQB used ultimates after someone already died. Mango Jai doesn't save his teammate CQB either, and it's a big shambles for the Hong Kong attitude side. When you finally get into a winning situation, your supports are up, their supports are down, but they just couldn't capitalize, and they don't even get one tick.
I'll never speak too soon, because one good fight could still win it for Hong Kong attitude, but this is now looking very winnable for Blank. They've weathered the worst of it and only really need to hold out for one last fight.
And this is also probably the best scenario
and that's the
for
way
Hong
to do
Kong
it.
attitude, except if IEOP gets another big pulse bomb kill. Now you just got to reset. Hong Kong attitude got to back out straight away.
Mui's already pressured out before he can get a Dragon Blade. At least they are going to get out straight away. Blank aren't able to follow up too hard and get a huge route off them, but they are now so lean for time.
And that was probably, again, a good situation for Hong Kong attitude. You're coming in when neither team really has ultimates. You can have a very even fight. Charge your ultimates in the middle of that. Get the first picks, but now Blank Esports, double support ultimates coming online. Mango Jai's got to catch up. Hong Kong attitude have a lot of other tools to use, but sustain has to be key.
Yeah, Hong Kong attitude need to get big conversions off these DPS ultimates that Blank don't match them with, but Pix could decide it. And there's already a Primal Rage from a Ting. They do convert one on to Eat You Up. That's a great start. Pulse Bomb gets eaten by Huwu, though, and Mui's pressured out, saved by the Transcendence that Mango Jai had available, but they kill Shaylin, and now Gunba can match his own Transcendence, and the sound barrier was there for RQT. Pressure out from Huwu with the self-destruct, and Trill preserves his life with that Primal Rage. Huss as well, Dragon Blade out. Mui getting nothing with his own as they convert onto a Ting, and it's looking like Hong Kong attitude poised to fall short of the mark as Blank just have more in the back pocket. Nothing gained for all the ultimates Hong Kong attitude have up, and Blank for the first time this series looking cool, calm and confident.
The first time this series as well, you're seeing a situation where Hong Kong attitude, we've already talked about the fact that they don't look like the cleanest team today, and now Blank are able to punish that. They weren't able to do it on Nepal. They didn't do it on King's Row as well. They didn't even do it the first time around that they attacked, but now suddenly Hong Kong attitude, they are making these big mistakes that they are able to punish as well on the Blank side. And we do see a Blank victory for that. So if you have a situation where Blank is saying, look, we practiced assault, this is now the results paying up for it.
And look, if their own defense, their Hong Kong attitude was living and dying by their own play and or misplay, then I have to say their assault on point B was exactly the same, only there was no living, right? It was just constantly not getting those same conversions. I mean, we just saw play of the game. There was, what, a 4 or 5K out of Shaolin, and they were constantly getting those on their defense. They didn't get a single play like that out of any of their DPSs, or indeed even out of a Ting, which he is sometimes quite able to do in that Winston on their offense.
Well, now you have a situation where Blank do come back up one map. 2-1 is the score now. We are going to go to an escort, so Blank, they get a gasp of air as they continue the series, but they are still on match point. Hong Kong attitude can still bring this one back very quickly. Could still be a 3-1 victory. Blank got to run the gauntlet. They got to win two more in a row if they want to bring this one back.
Here's the thing, it is still match point, but this has been a huge kind of breath of fresh air here for Blank. First of all, winning on that map mode, we've kind of talked enough about that, but now they do get to go to escort. Let's take a look at some replays first, though. So this is going to be their own initial breaking of point A, and by breaking I mean they get a third here and then get repelled. And there's something kind of micro I want to touch on here. A couple of members now from Blank actually tunnel off in this little corridor. Mango Jai is camped out on a health pack. Randy is sat in roughly behind him, and in that time we saw Huss really overcommit to that position. This is very narrowly held onto from here by Hong Kong Attitude, but because he went down and now suddenly they didn't have the DPS pressuring out the members of Hong Kong Attitude that are still here, they're able to just barely come in. Had Huss not tunneled quite so much and maybe addressed Randy first, it could have been a different story, because you don't want to go into that hacked health pack. That's Sombra territory. You want to make them come to you. You want to fight in your territory, which by this point should have been the point itself, and then they lost that territory.
And you got to commend Mango Jai and Mui, because Mui had this point stalled the entire time up until he eventually had to leave Charge's ultimate. They just didn't have enough members there, and Blank suddenly got 2 ticks. Then you had a situation where Mango Jai, he camped out by the health pack like you mentioned. He never died. He helped charge at EMP. And the EMP has to be the turning point, because as soon as it was used, that's when Hong Kong Attitude came in full force. Nano Boost used on Shaolin as well, and suddenly Blank routed out.
Exactly. It was just really finely handled by Hong Kong Attitude, and really taking advantage of, as well, of how Blank approached the fight. And like I said, kind of Huss going into that corridor. Look, if he had killed Mango Jai instantly, maybe it would have been a different story, but that opportunity was lost the moment he didn't get the kill on the dash. And he did still have a path to retreat. He had a Lucio he could have fallen back to. I don't want to kind of dive in too deep. I'm not sort of trying to rag on the guy here or anything, but that is one of those moments where the alternative probably would have paid off a little bit better, and it's one of those high risk, high reward that didn't pay off, and therefore they got rebuffed.
And by the way, you had return kills as well. Randy got himself some kills. Mui ended up getting kills in there. You have a situation where for Blank, it wasn't just a shutout. Exactly. It wasn't just 6 versus 2. It was more like 4, maybe 3 versus 2. And suddenly, Hong Kong Attitude, because they got important return kills, they were able to reinforce themselves. Again, the EMP, the big factor that really turned things around, but they were able to get the numbers in, and both teams were reinforcing in the middle of that. Let's take a look at the next replay now, and we're already on to B.
Yeah, so this was where Blank were at least able to secure themselves a little bit of time on the point, and the Pulse Bomb was the big opener for that. Honestly, this was just really nicely handled. They drew a lot of ultimates out of Hong Kong Attitude before they'd fully committed. Now they fully commit with this Transcendence, and honestly, there's nothing left here for Hong Kong Attitude. They get some return kills, which end up being a saving grace, because Blank do fall just short of that second third. You ideally, if you're Blank, want more than that first third, given the number of ultimates you had, given how well you played it up to this point. But then we do get these kind of hero moments out of the respawning members of Hong Kong Attitude. And it was the few trade kills they had that allowed them to do this.
And the Nano Blade as well, the Nano Boost coming from Mango Jai. Shaolin picking up the majority of the kills there. Shaolin staying alive, making sure he got the right members. And then the respawners coming out in a big way for Hong Kong Attitude, really helping them hold on. But that was a difficult situation.
Yeah.
We talk about the fact that Blank were able to find some holes. That was one of them, because that was when EMP wasn't available. Every time defensively EMP wasn't available, that was Blank advantage point, and they were able to get some good distance there. There was a future fight where EMP wasn't available. They didn't get any distance, but then that was also counteracted by the fact that Mui had the EMP for a fight that also didn't get anything done. So both teams kind of floundered their advantages when they probably should have won. But also, all in all, when you really weigh it up statistically, which team had better results when it was their power spike, it was Hong Kong Attitude, because the majority of the EMPs did do the work. It was just the one that was a letdown.
And the thing that's interesting about it is, on the whole, when they're in these losing situations where things have gone wrong, they are then making sure they're able to kind of hold on from that point, and we will actually just see that here as well. This is kind of approaching the final attack from Blank. Honestly, this is again just a whole timing thing, and it kind of illustrates what I want to say here, in that they commit the right ultimates at the right times to give themselves the option to turn these fights back around once things start to swing their way. Once they get, for example, respawns in, or they're able to get EMPs, or they can get some kind of power spike, they set themselves up such that when that comes in, they'll be able to flip the fight back around in their favor. That's something Ardiant do a lot. The problem is they're consistently ending up in that position because they lose the initial beat of the fight. And it's only here that they're able to start repelling Blank, again, because of the timing on some of those ultimates. Because of when they committed the ones earlier, Blank now had no extra ultimates to go off, and that meant that they couldn't really deal with the respawners as they were coming out. It's not ideal for Hong Kong Attitude. It's well-handed given the situation, but like I said, it is a problem that they're consistently ending up in that situation.
And that was the EMP play that unfortunately didn't work out for them, but you are right in the sense that they sort of had the right motions there. EMP was used by Mui, hit great targets. In fact, the timing of the EMP was probably as good as you want, because it cancelled out RQT sound barriers straight away. Let's take a look at the next replay now. This is now going to be on Hong Kong Attitude's attack, and if I'm not mistaken, they don't really get it past here, but this is also also an advantage point for Blank because it is ultimate advantage in terms of the supports. At least Gumba goes down, but expect RQT to respond to the sound barrier straight away. There it is, and now you're in a situation. Mango Jai dies with his ultimate, and this is where it starts to really fall apart for Hong Kong Attitude because again, you have to be in a support position where you can overpower the other supports. Make sure you get that advantage going. Still picks up a decent number of kills, but also Gumba comes out with a Transcendence. Just all extra time, allow the respawns to come out from Blank side.
And the thing is here, Blank don't mind committing these extra ultimates. They started the fight with more than what Hong Kong Attitude have. They don't mind committing the extras because they get the respawn advantage and can charge them back up. This is where Hong Kong Attitude started going really wrong though. The fight was essentially lost and they actually could have walked away from it with advantage for the next fight because they would have had 2 defensive ultimates that Blank didn't have. But CQB committed the sound barrier and they decided to go all in off the back of that, committing a Transcendence as well. And I feel honestly, that's ultimately what cost them. They had a little bit over a minute after that. They had enough time to set up properly for a good fight and they were about to be coming up on ultimates like Dragon Blade. You feel like there is this alternate world, and like I say, it would have been hard, but at that position, one fight could win it. When they got to the position where they had to win one fight, they were lacking in the defensive ultimates that probably could have kept them safe for longer.
And there's 2 scenarios there. The first scenario, and probably the best case scenario, is actually in that one fight. They just didn't lose CQB and Mango Jai at all, and they were able to use the support ultimates when they wanted to, because they already killed Gumbo. They split the 2 supports up on the Blank side, then RQT sound barrier comes up. Cool, you can respond with your own sound barrier. Gumba comes out, but RQT probably dies in that sort of situation. Either way, you're returning kills. You're making sure that the kills are always staggered and trickled on the Blank side, and you have both your supports alive. But in fact, both supports on the Hong Kong Attitude side went down, and that's when you're correct. They should have pulled back already. They should have set up on the next fight. Should have come in with the big player advantage, the big ultimate advantage, and that's when they were getting. That's when they would have had again a really good power spike. This is when they would have had a winning situation they can play off of, but they just didn't. They came back entirely dry and couldn't make anything of it.
And that was actually Hong Kong Attitude's best fight on attacking point B in terms of their own positioning. The fact that they were able to convert on Gunma quickly, and there was a very nice, very clean dive out of a Ting and Shaolin. And on the whole, they executed pretty well. And it was the first fight where they actually had the priority themselves. They were the ones making the proactive plays and going in. And like we said, it's the lack of conversion beyond that point that kind of cost them. And is that
That was a Junkrat.
Ah, right, it's a Junkrat. I was trying to figure out, like, what kind of explosion is this, but it is just a Junkrat. But in any case, Dorado going to be the pick. So like we said, a breath of fresh air, rather, for Blank, a fresher breath there for Blank with picking up the win now on Hanamura. And they do get to go to their own map pick on Escort, which is a game mode they're very solid at. Dorado, easily their best map of that. This is a very real opportunity for them to now push us to 5 games and get the reverse.
Exactly, because winning on your statistically worst game mode, they are starting to turn that statistic around now with this win, but winning in that sort of situation, turning it around against Hong Kong Attitude, now you're set up in a place where actually you can go towards all 5 maps and you can actually clean this out with the reverse sweep. It is possible, but certainly it is a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, a lot of work is one way to put it, and this is a map that they have dropped not consistently, but certainly a couple of times recently, as much as they have won on it a couple of times recently. And it does seem to be one of those things where, frankly, they win on it against teams better than them, and they lose against teams. Sorry, they win against teams they are better than, and they lose against teams who are better than them. And we see that in the match record against teams like Flash Wolves and all that sort of shebang. And then we're seeing them win it in other areas. So on the whole, it's hard, therefore, to say where this one should fall, because in terms of the most recent match record, Wisdom would suggest Hong Kong Attitude are ahead of this team, but this is much more of a question mark. I don't feel like that other statistic guarantees Hong Kong Attitude a win here.
Well, the biggest question has to be which team can actually execute here, which team can play, can have a clean game, because so far for both teams, they've had very rough games, made mistakes here and there. Blank punished better on Hanamura, but also Hong Kong Attitude punished much better on both Nepal and Kings Row. So I think both teams are quite rough around the edges in this series, but one team should be able to come out on top in terms of, hey, if you can just clean up a couple of extra things, punish the other team on a couple of other extra things as well, that's when you really edge out the other teams. Because actually it's very close. Despite Hanamura going over to Blank, it wasn't a super convincing win for them either, because they struggled so much on their own attack for reasons and situations when maybe they should have won. So I don't really know if either team is necessarily ahead just yet, but Hong Kong Attitude are at least on match point.
Certainly feeling a bit more cleanliness recently out of Blank, just in that final moment of Hanamura, but new map. You know, new dawn, new day, essentially. This could be a completely different situation. They were hovering things like Junkrat there, but they're opting into a Widowmaker to try and get the opening pick here. Good scatter out by Hong Kong Attitude to avoid the opening pick.
And you don't want to waste too much time here, and it probably changes because you don't want to have a repeat situation where you have Mui on Hanamura A and he just doesn't hit a single shot for a very long time. Certainly not a shot that actually results in a kill. So instantly going onto the Tracer, and Tracer Genji has been the bread and butter of Blank this entire series.
No opening picks out of either side on this very first part of the push, which is good news for Blank ultimately, but now Hong Kong Attitude get the position to start taking some fights on their terms.
Both teams. Oh, okay, Mui.
It's going to be the first convert out of Trill. Yeah, that's a really nicely timed dive out of Blank, just as Hong Kong Attitude themselves were about to press the go button. And Ting's had to fully retreat, and now they're going to be able to push past the arch for sure, which means Hong Kong Attitude now lose the ideal spot to fight. They'll still get a final contest here, because Shaolin is still kind of the only casualty, but Ting may have committed a bit early here. Indeed, he has going to get picked off, and Blank are going to put on the pressure off the back of that, getting a little bit punished for going in maybe a little earlier than necessary.
And this is a big cleanup now from Blank Esports, because for Hong Kong Attitude, as soon as you lost Mui, you then lost Shailin, and it was a 50-50. Do you then try and sort out the cart at the risk of losing everyone else? That's probably that's actually what they ended up going for, or do you actually fall out with your remaining members and keep everyone alive? They did choose to do that on the pole, but this time around they lose everyone.
And they've lost all claim to this high grounds for the initial part of this street space here. This honestly means Blank are just going to get a ton of momentum on their side.
And that's really important. It's momentum in terms of cart push, momentums in terms of positioning, but also most importantly in terms of ultimates, because only Mango Jai has something to use on the Hong Kong Attitude side. That's going to be important, but Gumba immediately matches that.
And these ultimates can be huge. They see the opportunity. Mango Jai forced to ult because Huss was about to dive onto him, but Gunba can just match it now. Hong Kong Attitude very lean on ultimates. Good headshot though onto Eat You Up as Huss isn't getting anything out of the Dragon Blade. Trill will get one down for his team, but actually suddenly it's Blank looking a little bit lean here. The payload has been moving this whole time, but they're not really getting the kills to make this worthwhile. Good placement on the self-destruct though. It's going to get some pressure, but it just kind of brings the rest of Hong Kong Attitude back to this fight. Blank are desperately relying on Eat You Up and Huss, who have now rejoined the fight, to get some solo kills, and it's honestly taking them so long. They finally start to convert a couple as Randy not able to get back in the mech, and they pressure back Mango Jai. In fact, good follow-up as well, and finally Blank going to be able to keep this underway.
And Hong Kong Attitude have so much to use there as well. They could have turned that fight around. They had the sound barrier to go. Ting could have ulted. He could have had a primal rage. They would have stayed in this fight, kept that car stored up, and Blank Esports, they ult in everything that they had, they used, and now they're running completely dry. Hong Kong Attitude should be able to turn around in this next fight. Expect the cart to stop.
Absolutely expect the cart to stop, but expect it to stop with a ton of time on the clock for Blank to still break point B. This is going to be a hard defense for Hong Kong Attitude if they're going to stop it before this cap.
It's also going to be a hard attack because you're behind, again, you're very far behind in terms of tempo. You have to build up ultimates if you're Blank Esports. You can't just charge in against Hong Kong Attitudes for free now.
Let's see how they go for it, because the sound barrier is early from Hong Kong Attitude. They immediately convert onto Gunba. Mui, nice flashbang. He's going to keep himself alive for now as they convert onto Trill. And they've weathered the storm. Only 2 ultimates used to hold that one down.
And the thing for Blank Esports as well, they went very hard onto Mui, but what about everyone else? Shailin on the backside, a Ting on the flank as well. They were able to pick up the kills while Blank Esports spread themselves out extremely thin. Everybody went for Mui, and you didn't even kill Mui. Eat Up nearly died as well to a headshot. So for Mui, that was pretty well defended for Hong Kong Attitude, still holding on to a lot of really important ultimates. Blank Esports still charging.
Yeah, they are about to come up to a few very key ones. Notably, they'll have 2 of these defensive ultimates to Hong Kong Attitude's 1, and that could be all they need to break the point. One good fight should be able to get it over the line for them as well.
You still need to have a situation where Mui looks for something with the Deadeye but doesn't kill himself to Huss's deflect. That's going to be an interesting 1v1, and so far, Huss has managed to get one over Mui for the majority of the time, but now deflect is off the table. Maybe this is the time.
Early pick on a Ting is really big, and Blank just going to go really aggressive off that. Mango Jai commits the Transcendence because frankly he needs to, otherwise Blank get this for free. Good self-destruct to create space, and it catches Gunba as well. That's a saving grace, and they get the kill on Huss as well. Suddenly Blank are actually getting beaten back here despite the good commit. That was just barely weathered by Hong Kong Attitude, but that was so key for them to win.
And you have a situation where Hong Kong Attitude had to all in here. It's also for Blank Esports, despite losing, now you've turned the tables, now the progression is on your side, and now you can actually get this push in because you saved ultimates instead. Hong Kong Attitude, for the first time so far in a decent amount of minutes now, have to feel like they're on the back foot, and they have to probably play a little bit more conservatively, but also play around the fact that there are no support ultimates on the Blank side either.
Yeah, that being said, once again, Huss is the major DPS ultimate here, and we haven't seen him get many good Dragon Blades so far. He really needs to change that up. if this fight is going to go their way. And already getting pressured out here.
He might just
and
die,
again, getting picked way too early. A little bit caught out on the side there. Not quite reading the defensive position out of Hong Kong Attitude, and with no counter kill in yet from Blank, they finally get a ting, but it's honestly already looking a little bit dire. They're going to go ahead and commit ultimates anyway in the form of the Primal Rage, but they've lost their supports. This is now very hard for them to convert unless they kill these DPSs, but they don't have DPSs of their own, and they're just going to get beaten back now, having lost ultimates.
And Trill committed there as well. He actually gets out on... Oh, no, he doesn't get out. So that's even more important because now Hong Kong Attitude buy even more time. Shilen's been tearing up the entire side of Blank Esports. Elop's had enough of that. He's going onto the Soldier now as well. And you got to think this was probably a winnable fight for Blank Esports. For the first time in a very long time, they were actually ahead of Hong Kong Attitude. Now they've given that back to Hong Kong Attitude. And Shilen opens straight up on Elop. Doesn't matter what he plays. Shilen's got his number.
That's really big. Hong Kong Attitude are now unequivocally ahead of Blank. Just in every aspect. They're going to get these support ultimates sooner. Blank may be able to get some up during this fight, but if it's a quick finish for Hong Kong Attitude, especially if they pick RQT or Gunbird, this is an easy win.
The big mistake still is that they're overcommitting onto Milwee, still spreading themselves out really thin, and actually the back line from Blank Esports always taking out RQT and Gumba consistently down. Look out for Shilen, he's been the assassin.
And meanwhile, Huss has just not got anything. It's, what, 3 fights now, and he hasn't used a Dragon Blade? Plus Hong Kong Attitude with the way the payload has moved backwards.
He's so
already getting pressured out. They're going to get time for a second fight, even if Blank break them on this first one.
Oh, you gotta get in there because 5 seconds left to go. You got nothing to use, but you gotta have to use them. Huss is still low.
And he's constantly just trying to avoid all these members. Randy's gonna follow up. He looks like a sitting duck, never pulling out the Dragon Blade, never getting aggressive. They do pick Mui, that is something, but the ultimates are all there for Hong Kong Attitude, still holding on to a sound barrier of their own, and the conversion is not there from Blank as Shilen goes deep to pick off the remaining DPS, and unless Huss can come in and absolutely shine bright for this team, it is already looking all over for them as they lose their 2 tanks now as well. Huss, where are you? This whole fight finally comes back in with the Dragon Blade opens up, and Shilen gets 2 for good measure, but that's all he's going to get, and 84.86 will be the final distance for Blank.
And you got to consider, what if he got that 2 earlier? What if he got that 2 while the rest of his team was alive when the team fight had actually started and he wasn't the first one picked out? In fact, what if he just didn't get picked out to start with? He's always constantly revealing his position. Hong Kong Attitude also really good at finding out what Huss is doing, where he is, and how to counter him out. And time again, they're able to find him, put the damage on him. Even if they don't kill him, they put him low enough that he doesn't Dragon Blade, because if he does, he dies, but he just never gets a chance to Dragon Blade. When he finally does, he gets 2 kills, but no team, can't cap, the game's over.
And the truth is, he's a little bit further forward than he's needed to be in any of these moments. He can actually wait for the team to start getting aggressive and then go in at the same time, rather than trying to be there in advance to capitalize off the dive. You can just go in at the same time. It is a lot safer to do that. And honestly, I feel like there's a little bit of hesitation out of this team. They're not feeling quite on the same page in that aspect of the dive. If you're wanting to set up those flankers, that's when you risk them getting sniffed out like Huss has been.
So those are the micro things that really went wrong for Blank Esports. When you look at the macro side of things as well, you have to look at for the timings of attacks, and specifically, you have to look at the power spikes, because there was a moment for Blank when they were definitely ahead of Hong Kong Attitude. Hong Kong Attitude have absolutely nothing to use. Blank Esports finally had that ultimate advantage. They were saving up for so long, charging up for so long, then they spread themselves out too thin, over-chasing onto Milwee consistently, 2 fights in a row, getting themselves picked on the backside, and then not even killing Milwee. I think they actually did get Milwee the second time around, but if you're going to lose RQT and Gumba, it's not worth it.
That being said, Blank are now on the defense, and we have seen Blank have some pretty stellar defenses on Dorado. Absolutely can hold in that same kind of courtyard area to the end of the clock, or indeed could hold even earlier than that.
But we're now seeing a similar story to Hanamura, where Blank Esports on their attack do not finish the map. Now they have to rely on getting a really good hold on to B. They did that already on Hanamura. They have to repeat it now against Hong Kong Attitude. And mind you, Hong Kong Attitude had the ability to win that as well, so maybe they have the ability to win it here. I'm certainly expecting them to really give it their best shot.
Yeah, getting very aggressive early. Huss looking to kind of get the flank here. Really pressure these supports if Hong Kong Attitude go too deep on the members of Blank that are on this high ground.
So far, for Hong Kong Attitude, just got to take it slowly. They're getting the picks.
Yeah, who would be getting demegged honestly means Blank lose a lot of
Huss
pressure.
straight away, like as soon as he's spotted, he's down.
Yeah, and honestly, had actually mistimed the dash as well. He wasn't going to make that gap anyway, so a little bit of a fumble there actually out of him.
This actually looks cleaner than the Blank Esports attack even. Now you're in a situation where Hong Kong Attitude can set up for this attack. You can get that early positioning, stop Blank Esports from coming through the choke, and they're going to have to come through that choke. No ultimates for either side, but the positioning all goes on Hong Kong Attitude.
It's a big dive onto Gunba, but it could hurt them if the follow-up doesn't quite convert. And the counter dive is actually being able to break through that choke point out of Blank. Huss and EUP are starting to get a bit more work done here without these tanks completely keeping them down. And there hasn't been any pressure on the payload with Hong Kong Attitude because the Ting and Shaolin have been on the other side of this one. Self-destruct from Randy to buy him more time, but he hasn't really got the members to follow up now, and this should actually be Blank able to hold on to this ground and regroup.
And after Mui died, Shaolin was the only DPS alive. That was all the damage for Hong Kong Attitude. While the Ting and Randy were trying to make it their own, they were trying to get the job done. They got to kill themselves, but Shaolin wasted a lot of time trying to take that 1v1 against RQT, doesn't win that 1v1 against RQT, and doesn't help his tanks in time either.
It's funny, like, you kill the one guy that's on the other side of that, and suddenly you're like, well, now what? There's actually no one else to kill. EUP was looking for the follow-up there, and the health pack wasn't in, but good retreat out of Shaolin. Haas.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, Hong Kong Attitude, one thing they're doing consistently extremely well is picking up Huss, and not only that, but Mui, now he's getting the kills onto EUP as well. Reloads really quickly with the Deadeye, and the fight does continue. Where are the support ultimates from Blank Esports? You got to use them.
They're finally committing in with them, and Huss going in with the Dragon Blade as well. Didn't get the sound barrier to keep himself alive through that, and was right on top of a Transcendence, but who we're going to stabilize this fight for now, and they start coming off about even. Good D-Mech on Randy as well, even as they lose Gunba, means again, Blank able to wait for EUP to come back. They've kind of survived the brunt of this, and now are able to get aggressive. Now they're looking for a full-on route here. They pressure Shaolin back, and if these respawners aren't careful as well, they could get pressured out as well. CQB not quite going to scrape away alive, and suddenly Hong Kong Attitude so lean on time.
And that was a big string of kills for Blank Esports as well. Where Blank are actually succeeding where they didn't last time is they're able to kill Mui consistently on the McCree. This is going to force Mui to now switch onto the Genji. He needs the mobility. He feels like he's being pressured out. Despite him actually getting kills on EUP, when Mui goes down, Shaolin unfortunately isn't picking up the damage on their solo DPS. So now, Blank Esports, this actually looks extremely winnable on an 8-cap-A defense.
Saving grace for Hong Kong Attitude will be Shaolin's Pulse Bomb and potentially Randy's self-destruct to create a bit of space for them to play with. But EUP's own Pulse Bomb could do a ton of work here. They need to convert. That's what's going to count.
Speed is important here for Hong Kong Attitude because they have a window where they are ahead in ultimates. They have a window where they can outflank and outperform Hong Kong, or rather Blank Esports, but that time is surely running out.
They basically had to go just then, and Huss beat them to the punch by picking Mango Jai. Now look, the respawns are closer for Hong Kong Attitude. This is salvageable, but not if Blank catch them on the retreat. Indeed, they retreat safely for now.
We're still in a situation though. You have to be able to identify a win condition for Hong Kong Attitude, and it just really doesn't seem apparent. They got to get some good picks because otherwise, EUP's consistently killing them versus the Blank Esports. They don't look like they want to budge.
They're on the cusp of a Christmas tree is here as well. People either have ults or are above 80%. This could be an uphill battle for Hong Kong Attitude, with the respawns being the only thing that favors them. But now as the overtime begins, Randy opening up with a self-destruct to create space, and it gets nothing. Good pick onto RQT, neuters the sound barrier, and Gunba already committed this Transcendence there, sorry. Mango getting picked, even trade for Gunba, and Huss not getting much with his Dragon Blade. That being said, neither does Mui. The respawns, once again, closer for Hong Kong Attitude, but they're the ones looking leaner. A Ting not going to get caught in that sound barrier. He's going to have to get healed up the old-fashioned way. Blank with their own sound barrier now as RQT barely able to rejoin the fight. Should be able to tide them over, but they have to pick Shaolin and Mui again, because either could just secure this fight down pat, and indeed, picking Huwu was a good start to that end. They're still not out of this one just yet. Mui's got to be the one to do it as a Ting has opened up the space. There's one for Mui. He's looking for more. He's got Trill as well. And at the 11th hour, Blank finally start to crumble on this hold. Hong Kong Attitude barely keeping it alive for long enough to get this over the line, but they will get it over the line and keep this one alive.
And for Hong Kong Attitude, their ultimates just came on in line as well. For Blank Esports, they already had the ultimates. They already spent the ultimates. Hong Kong Attitude, they took the brunt of that attack. They lost their members, but again, you mentioned this already. They have the respawn advantage. They've reinforced so quickly, Blank reinforced so slowly. So for Hong Kong Attitude, eventually you have a situation. Shaolin finally picks up a kill in the Pulse Bomb. Mui as well gets the Dragon Blade in time, picks up a bunch of kills, and Hong Kong Attitude now push out, but they don't have the time.
Yeah, they really don't. They also don't have the ultimates. Blank are going to be coming up to them sooner. And honestly, this Sombra pick is baffling. I don't think they had the time to set up a Sombra properly.
They absolutely don't. I think the Genji was definitely going to be much better here, and for Huss, he might just be able to get a kill quickly on the move.
Oh,
if
that would
happens,
be huge.
It will be huge.
Oh, he does get hacked and he gets picked out. That's super unfortunate because that's immediately going to swing this back the other way. There's still plenty of time that Blank can just run off the clock though, and they are going all in on doing that, but they need to be careful to not overextend here.
You gotta be careful as well because Blank Esports, this is now where their power comes in. As soon as that happens, they lose a bunch of members. This is when Blank should be winning.
He didn't even use the self-destruct that he had available. This is a huge momentum play out of Hong Kong Attitude. They're going to be able to charge the ultimates that they were just lacking. And Blank, by dying in a trickle death situation, are going to get really routed back here.
All right, well, Blank should be able to win this next fight, but you are going to be fighting into EMP very soon. As much as we say, look, it's a little bit confusing. It's a little bit strange to be seeing a Sombra here. You don't really have the time to charge the EMP. You are going to get at least one. And if it's a big one, then it's going to be good enough to push you over the line, and you can still win. So for Blank Esports, it's now or never. If Blank win here, they can hold. If not, they're done.
They got the ultimates to do a Trill. Early Primal Rage looking to create space. Hubu self-destruct as well to the same end, and they counter out a Ting's dive with this Transcendence. Now they need to convert off the DPSs, but that's what Huss has struggled with. Doesn't get the sound barrier, doesn't get the extra help, and does go down. The EMP connects, and the follow-up is already there. This is the self-destruct from Randy, and Hubu didn't get anything with his own. It picks Eat You Up, and I do not believe it, but Hong Kong Attitude are going to push this one over the line, even when Blank had everything going for them. Even when Blank nearly first held them on a Hong Kong Attitude deliver when it counts. And they close out the series again against Blank Esports.
And this is why you're going to look at it like a game of inches, because it only takes a little bit for a team to get ahead. And it did seem like both teams were rather neck and neck. But Hong Kong Attitude, they edged Blank out again. Time and time again. The only time that Blank really struck back was on Hanamura. And look, that's a big time to strike back, but you need to continue that. You're right, it should have been an A-hold. It wasn't, and Blank rightfully lose.
But you know what? I've got to say it. And look, it is a little bit more complex than what I'm painting it here, but how many times could Blank have won not just this game, but actually most of the games they played across this series had Huss got a Dragon Blade off instead of dying? That would have been so massive, could have totally changed the face of this. But when it comes down to it, he was constantly getting killed. Hong Kong Attitude were putting in the work to keep him constantly out of the picture when he had that potentially game-changing ultimate at every single juncture across the whole series. That is not to be discredited. And off the back of that, are going to pick themselves up the second series win now against Blank. If Blank do get revenge, it's going to have to come in playoffs, and their ability to make playoffs has now been put in serious jeopardy.
Absolutely, 3-1 now the score. And it is Hong Kong Attitude's victory they pick up now, winning it against Blank Esports both times, to go directly to the replays and not waste any time here.
This is the closing fight here, actually, of Blank, where they got repelled. And again, Huss already pressured out at the top of it. He'd had that Dragon Blade available for about 3 fights by this point, and he finally got it off in the overtime. And you mentioned it yourself, actually, he does get 2 kills with it, and had those 2 kills come earlier, this would have been a different fight. But it is Hong Kong Attitude's fight to win here, and they just have the resources. The rotations are there, the timing is there, and the positioning was very clean.
You got to look at macro-wise as well. There were moments when Blank Esports was seriously ahead. This is the 2 kills that sort of gets mentioned, and it has to be, you know, the micro plays aside. Look, yeah, absolutely, Huss got shut down a lot. You also have to credit Hong Kong Attitude for that, because they consistently knew where Huss was, consistently put the damage on him. The classic situation was on B during the can't push section right past the statue. You have a situation where as soon as Huss shows his face, just gets shut down, Mui headshots, everybody comes on him. He has 200 HP, but it just goes like that. It's gone. 200 HP disappears. So, I mean, for a guy like Huss, he's got a deflect, he's got a dash. Genji doesn't usually die that quickly, but when it's Hong Kong Attitude picking him up constantly, finding out what he's doing, he does go down.
Exactly, and that's the thing. The fact that it was consistent. Look, there are actually 2 parts to that, and one is Huss sometimes maybe being further forward than he needed to be, sometimes mispositioning a little bit, and like you said, sometimes maybe not retreating adequately either. But the other side of that was Hong Kong Attitude constantly putting him in those situations where he had to retreat. So it's this 2-part thing. It's not anyone's fault necessarily. And now coming into this next replay here, this was the fight where honestly Hong Kong Attitude were barely able to stabilize, and it wasn't going well off the top. They lost a lot of key members, and RQT, even though he got picked early, was able to rejoin and get a very good sound barrier off here. The thing that also ultimately saved them here. CQB's sound barrier actually kept Shaolin in the fight, and that's what they were able to get pressure off because Blank had already tried to go aggressive to close out kills. Because that sound barrier rescued some members, suddenly Blank were a little overextended, and it's on the reset as they move backwards that things started to go a little bit sour for them. And like I said, because Shaolin was able to stay in that fight rather than die, respawn, and come back, he got the pulse bomb, and that ended up being the big swing.
And you have a lot of situations here where it's actually quite even. Both teams are able to reinforce, both teams are able to get picks, both teams use sound barrier. RQT's sound barrier was definitely better, but inside the sound barrier, you didn't have a situation where Blank actually picked up the kills at all. So for Hong Kong Attitude, they have the closer respawns, eventually they overpower. Mui then gets a Dragon Blade as well, and that's when he really shows a lot of effect on that hero and is able to pick up the win, or rather pick up a bunch of kills that allow Hong Kong Attitude to get the push on, and that was a very dire moment, and you do have to go back and consider Blank had such a dial on that A defense. You got to expect them to kind of have that A defense locked down, but just not the case.
Exactly. But I do have to go back to something I did mention on Hanamura with Hong Kong Attitude, and that is that when things were dire, they were playing everything correctly to give themselves the best shot. By the way, player of the game is going to go over to Mui on the Tracer. Kind of refreshing to see. Normally Shailin's Tracer, but I just kind of want to wrap up what I was saying there in that, look, they were doing that very consistently, and I did say that ideally you don't want to end up in those situations in the first place. But actually, once again, they are able to convert off that situation, and it pays off in that they do pick up the win this time, whereas they actually ultimately didn't on Hanamura despite being able to do that on the defense. So on the whole, my takeaway from that is actually, if you combine that with cleaner execution at the top of fights and not ending up in that situation in the first place, which by the way is what Hong Kong Attitude are very good at, then actually this is a scary looking team.
I think for both sides, I think that's kind of true for both sides because you have to go back to the fact that for both teams, it wasn't super clean on either side. There were a bunch of mistakes that were made. Both teams punished each other, but at the end of the day, I think Hong Kong Attitude, they were able to pull through when it really counted. That's something that you mentioned on, I believe it was King's Row. Right at the final moments, very similar attack story, very similar defense story, and both teams nearly got held up, but Hong Kong Attitude pulling it through exactly when the moment called up for them. And that's why you got to think of it as a game of inches, because actually both teams are super close, and either team could actually end up being quite scary.
Yeah, it's one of those things. You really hate to suggest that the series was down to who made what mistake at what time, but certainly there were moments where it ended up being a little bit like that. Like I said, how different a series could this have been if Huss was getting Dragon Blades off? For example, on Hanamura, it could have been a solid cap out. On the Dorado attack, it could have been a cap out. On the defense, it could have been a hold. Little bits like that here and there. He actually didn't really run it on the King's Row on their offense, but even so, had that played out a little bit differently, indeed, had they actually got off the cart and let Eat You Up reset, for example, could have been a totally different story.
Let's get into the post-match interview now with the winners. Hong Kong Attitude, it's going to be Shailen and Mui. So introduce yourselves.
大家好，我是木卫。
好的，那我现在来问一下小林好了，因为其实呢，这一次刚好在这个版本的阶段，那你是第二季首次使用炸弹鼠的人，那你自己觉得操作起来感觉如何
What do you think about that?
炸弹鼠操作起来感觉蛮无脑的。
无脑是不是？
It's a little confusing
是觉得
still.
算还 OK， 算顺手，就一直丢炸弹就好。
对，就是丢掉，然后有人靠近，然后就丢去不成就好。
有这么新手的教学，那我好奇问一下，因为有些人是本身就喜欢炸弹鼠的角色，那你之前是有常练吗？还是因为你要配合
Did you practice it for much, or was it just for this?
这赛季改的时候我才拿的吧。
I only just started practicing for the second round robin.
这么临时，但是因为是简单的，所以你觉得 OK？
对。
好，那再来，因为今天在国王大道这张地图的时候，有发现到Blank 就是你们的对手，他们是出了3坦加。
So Blank had the multiple tank lineup with the turrets. Did you feel a little pressure from that? Yeah, it definitely caught me by surprise.
对，然后怎么会欧瑞莎跟壁垒？
所以会觉得
the Orisa as well for expanded webs.
对，蛮快。
一开始我们是先躲起来。
I feel like our first reaction was to hide.
刺客去闹他们的前排或后排。
And I feel like, we were trying to find either an entry on the front line or the back line.
再进攻 ，OK， 了解。那我们这边看一下木刚。
Going on to Mui.
这边木今天闪光发挥的很好嘛。
So you had a good tracer today.
看到说很多收割粘炸弹也是粘得非常漂亮。
So you had some good pulse bombs as well.
拳王 hitbox 在这个版本已经改动 ，hitbox 变小了，不知道 木鱼还有
Doomfist hitbox on rocket punch decreased. How do you feel about Doomfist now?
以往我们是用 前往去 counter 刺客，因为
So we used Doomfist a lot in the
刺客
past to
血量
counter
很小，
DPSs
然后
with
他会
Doomfist.
站在很前的位置，所以以前的版本很容易揍到刺客，然后把他没有杀在。
So you know it was easy to
改
get
版
kills
之
back then.
后，他 hitbox 变小了，就很难去杀。
So now the hitbox has
所以
changed.
就没有再拿。
I find it very difficult to get the
容错
same
率变
kills.
低了，所以后不好用，所以比较不会在选角上面去选用。
So do you feel like you won't pick it very much anymore? He says, yeah, I probably
因为
won't.
其实现在就是以前好像蛮好打，现在反而会有一种
So it used to
让
feel
我
like it was
太
easy to
全队
play.
队友一起灭亡的感觉。
And now it feels
所以可
quite
能之
difficult to
后
play.
改版了之后，大家的团队一定还是会有所调整的，就大家还可以期待一下，稍后大家队伍有没有什么不一样的风格和阵容了？那我们这边休息一下，精彩比赛马上就
Well,
回来
that
了。
is the post-match interview from Shailin and Mui, and it does explain a lot of things today. You have a situation now where both Huss and Mui do not feel like they want to go on to the Doomfist, and I gotta agree with that. I gotta agree with the reasons, but now we are also moving into a situation where both teams are picking up the Genjis a lot more, trying out different compositions. I still gotta commend the creativity out of both of them onto King's Row, but a loss for Blank at the end of the day, and you sort of mentioned this in terms of standings, it's going to affect them down the line.
And that's the thing, right? With that, though, Hong Kong attitude, it is really starting to pay off for these guys. The work they've been putting in since halfway through Season 1, they are now very much secure in that third place, at least for now. It is a long round robin ahead, and a lot of things can change given how close these standings are. But Hong Kong attitude already off to a good start in terms of making playoffs.
Absolutely, and there's another team that has been off to a good start, and another team that has unfortunately not, and that's going to be Flashwolves and Libelin Supreme. And Libelin Supreme will also be debuting their new member replacing Hotate very, very soon, and that's going to be the next match coming up, so we'll look forward to that, and it all happens right after this break.